Most unique that a non-title fight carries such huge significance in the world of boxing. And of course, before we start any further, there was some big news that broke a couple of hours ago. Let's have a look at the joint statement from Matchroom and Wasserman Boxing. We've been made aware that a random anti-doping test for Connor Benn conducted by the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association returned an adverse analytical finding for trace amounts of a fertility drug. The B sample has yet to be tested, meaning there's no rule violation has been confirmed. Indeed, Mr. Benn has not been charged with any rule violation. He's not suspended and he remains free to fight. Mr. Benn has since passed a doping control test conducted by the UK Anti-Doping Agency, the Anti-Doping Authority, to which the British Board of Control has delegated its doping control testing for the bout. Mr. Benn has passed all doping control tests conducted by UKAD. Both fighters have taken medical and legal advice, are aware of all relevant information and wish to proceed with the bout this Saturday. Now, we will be hearing from Eddie Hearn when he arrives at the venue this afternoon for the open workout. This, of course, is not the way that we wanted to start fight week, folks. Most of you know Darren and I well enough by now. It's not an easy position for us to be in. We appreciate your understanding on that. But we crack on ahead of a massive night Saturday night. There were so many variables and intrigue ahead of this fight. But of course, this story is now going to dominate the headlines over the next 2 or 3 days.
Of course. I mean, I found out the news on the way down here, and I guess, like most, still processing it. You know, trying to get my head around it all. But then I remember, excusing the top of the bill, we've got a great undercard. So I think it's only fair right now for us to talk about those. This is a big moment for all of the guys on the undercard. But yeah, like I say, still processing the news that we've got recently. Yeah, it's going to take a few hours, isn't it? And I think we need to kind of have a discussion after this and try and unpick what's gone on. And as I said, we will be hearing from Eddie when he arrives. I'll be putting a few questions to him in the next half an hour or so. There are 10 fights on the bill on Saturday night from the O2. Before the bell, our pre-broadcast segment, for those of you that are new to our show, starts at about 4 o'clock. Darren and myself and Fabio Wardley will be joining us on the commentary desk. I feel like we haven't called a fight together for... It's been a while, mate.
Yeah, it was like every week, and now we've had a bit of... Because Andy Lee's been away, of course, on paternity leave, and then with Joseph Parker. He's back in action, so he'll be with Mike for the top of the show. Darren and myself will be calling all the pre-broadcast section. Starting with young George Liddell, one of Tony Sims. He's a debutant. Trained by Kevin Mitchell, isn't he? I think you spoke to Tony about it yesterday.
I rang Tony yesterday, and we had a good chat about George, and he's a big fan of George. He says he's got kind of everything you need to go a long way in boxing, and all of those attributes, which are, you know, he's hard working, he can box on the front foot, back foot, not to get too technical now. Like I say, he leaves no stone unturned in the gym, but on top of that, it's the quality of guys that he's sparring with. You've got John Ryder, you've got Felix, you've got Connor Benn. You know, he's in there rubbing shoulders, sparring with these top-class fighters, and Tony really rates him. He's been doing a lot of work with Kevin Mitchell. Kevin also thinks he's a very good fighter, and look, I think as far as George Liddell is concerned, with what's going on in his gym and around him, as long as he can keep sort of feeding off of that success, future's very bright for him.
He's in against Hrvoje Grgic from Zagreb in Croatia. That's first up in a 4-rounder. Big Matty Harris, who's 3-0, 2 knockouts, big heavyweight, is in action second on the bill against Yuri Sunaj. Chloe Watson, Ricky Hatton-trained fighter, is in third against Nancy Franco. Then we've got Shannon Courtenay, the return of her after a year out with that knee surgery, in against Gemma Rueg. And then Harlem Eubank, who was in a really strange encounter. We'll come on talk a little bit about him, and we'll have him on the show after he's gone through his paces in the ring. He was hit twice after the bell by a Mexican fighter in his last contest about 8 weeks ago, and the referee gave him 5 minutes to recover, but essentially he was knocked out and had to then go and see out the next couple of rounds. And of course the fight was called off in the night for another infringement after a break, and well, he did very well to get through it. So he's back in action against David Campillo, and that will close proceedings roughly 6:45, 7 o'clock, where we then go live on the DAZN pay-per-view around the world. Lyndon Arthur back in action. He was in against Walter Gabriel Sequeira, a kind of tune-up after that Anthony Yard defeat. Didn't really show up in the Yard rematch after being so brilliant and winning it almost one-handed in the first one. Ellie Scottney in against the European champion at 122-pound, Mary Romero, who's been in very good form and is a dangerous fighter too. That's a proper acid test for Ellie Scottney, who's got better and better the last 2 or 3 fights. That will be very interesting. Felix Cash back in action against Connor Coyle as well after a difficult year last year and scraping to victory in his last contest. Galal Yafai in a really tough scrap as well with Gohan Garcia, and that will set the table very nicely for our top of the bill, which is still going ahead. Chris Eubank Jr and Conor Benn meeting 30 years after their dad's last battle battle, I beg your pardon, into epic encounters. What a build-up it has been, and I never forget, Darren, being at both of their debuts as a fan. Conor's in 2016 on the Anthony Joshua Charles Martin undercard, Chris Eubank Jr, and always thinking, isn't it a shame they're not a little bit closer in weight, because that would be a hell of a story. Even as recently as 6 months ago, never considered that this would be a possibility, and we're now 3 days away from it being one.
Yeah, look, that was the same sort of conversation around all of me and my friends, that, it's such a shame they're not that close in weight. But look, the fight's happening, we're finally there, and look, regardless of what's gone on, that atmosphere in the O2 just before that first bell is going to be absolutely electric.
The two fights with the Daz in the 90s, as a young fight fan, boxing obviously ran in the family. Do you remember where you watched those fights?
Yeah, certainly the rematch I do. Yeah. We watched it at home, and we were big Nigel Benn fans in my household, and we were screaming him on. I actually watched the two fights again yesterday, just to get me pumped for this fight, and it was epic. I mean, the first fight was tremendous. It was all action, and the rematch, just Nigel coming in pumped up, head shaven. I remember it clear as day, being around my mum and dad's house. But let's hope that this fight lives up to those epic battles.
Certainly so. Well, Tony Sims, of course, who guided your career, will be in the corner of Connor Benn on Saturday night, and he's managing young George Liddard, who makes his debut and is the first up on our pre-broadcast segment before the bell on Saturday night at 4 o'clock. And George is ready to go through his paces, so to bring him to the ring, let's hand you over now to David Diamante.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the Alternate here in London, England, for the media workout for Born Rivals. Big night of fights taking place at the O2 Arena on Saturday night, and it's all brought to you courtesy of Mr. Eddie Hearn of Matchroom Boxing and Wasserman Boxing. Of course, it'll go out live around the world on DAZN pay-per-view. 11 fights, 3 title fights, and at the top of the bill, it is Born Rivals at Eubank Jr. versus Benn. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start off this open workout with a gentleman from Billericay, Essex. He's 20 years old. He's a 4-time amateur national champion, and on Saturday night, he'll be turning over. Please welcome George Liddard.
Incredible setup here, and 20-year-old George Liddard came up through Billericay and Wickford ABC as a boy, had a decent amateur pedigree in his age groups, won English schools, GB3 Nations, youth cadets, a national title at 69 kilos. I was reading an article in the Liverpool Echo about his performances with the Billericay and Wickford boys, and they brought over a New York amateur team to Liverpool. It reminded me of the old USA UK matches they used to do in Liverpool. Yeah. I think Marty Murray and Danny Jacobs fought there as well. I don't want to bring USA and UK up because I don't want you to start talking about Andre Berto, but...
It was Timothy Bradley, actually.
Oh, yeah. Did you do a USA UK thing as well?
Yeah, the Hilton.
Bradley?
Yeah.
Did he beat you?
2 points, yeah.
Sorry, man. Genuinely didn't know that. Wasn't even setting you up for one.
No.
Well, there we go. It's nice to dig up something else to beat Darren with. Multiple Eastern Counties champion. I think he won 7 or 8 of those. And he had high hopes as an amateur boxer for England, trial with GB. Missed out on selection for the Europeans and suffered really badly with that kind of long COVID last winter. Left him unable to train. And, well, Darren, having been a spectator to some of the early track sessions that Tony Sims takes the boys through and seeing how they're put through their paces, this young man wasn't capable of hanging with the group. He'd soon be found out. So he's got to have not just skill and potential, but a little bit of grit and something about him.
Exactly, I was about to say, grit and determination. You have to if you want to, mix it with those guys in the gym. But I'll touch on what I said before as well. And for those that might not understand the importance of having that world-class sparring, which George does have, it takes you to another level. And again, look, I can only talk about myself because I was lucky enough to have those sparring sessions with the likes of Cole Frotch, etc. And it did take me to another level.
Is it actually sort of important to get a little bit of a hiding in the early days?
100%. 100%. And it gauges not only your technical ability and where you need to get to, but also your heart and your courage and how much you really want it. There's levels between amateur and professional. You're doing more rounds, it's grueling, it's tough. And these spars, not only, like I say, on a technical and ability-wise aspects of things where you need to be, it also shows you those things, how hard and how tough you've got to be. And for George to have that in the gym with the likes of Felix, Cash, Connor, John Ryder, it will elevate him to another level. Look, I'll tell you what, from what I'm hearing really good things, but if you're a sort of a less tougher man than George, it can break you. It's one of those, it either makes you or break you. And from what I heard Tony tell me yesterday on the phone, he speaks very highly of him, and Tony's not one of those to blow smoke up your backside if you can't mix it with the best.
Ladies,
so look, it's a long journey ahead, but he's a very, very good talent.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, what do you say? Let's make some noise out here. George Linden. He's turning over on Saturday night. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, let's make some noise out here. We got a fighter up here, 4-time amateur national champion. Support your fighters out here. Thank you. Let's look alive. All right, George Linden. Coming up next right now. She'll be fighting in a flyweight attraction from Birkenhead. She's 3-0. Chloe Watson, ladies and gentlemen. Clap your hands out there. There we go. She's trained by a gentleman you might know, Mr. Ricky Hatton. Give him a nice round of applause, too. Chloe, come on up to the ring.
Well, George Linden was out before he even got in then. So we'll speak a little bit more about him on Saturday night on Before the Bell. Myself, Darren and Fabio Wardley will be talking through his contest with Vojin Grgic from Zagreb in Croatia. There is Ricky Hatton and there is Chloe Watson, 22 years of age from Birkenhead, signed with Wasserman Boxing. As you heard there from
Here she is, ladies and gentlemen, 3-0, Chloe Watson.
Trained by Ricky Hatton, they've been working together since March 2021, introduced through a close family friend. She made her debut November 25th on one of the Wasserman Development Series. It was a 4th rounder against Judith Hatchbold at York Hall.
The dreaded shoelaces.
I don't imagine you knew how to tie yours until you were about 25.
You still tie mine now.
Until you married Beth, probably. Yeah. You're getting a lot better, though, I have to say.
I'm getting there. Yeah, big fan of Chloe from what I've already seen. She's very confident, almost flashy. She's got a lovely jab. She moves really well, and as she settles down, she really starts to get her shots off really, really well. She moves her head. She's always thinking about the exit after, whether it's her feet or her head, like I say. And she'll be very hard to beat, I feel. It does help having someone like Ricky in your corner. He was quite good, you know. I know it's, you know, it's all part of Fight Week, these media workouts. For some of these younger fighters, like George Linden and Chloe Watson on there, and some of the other younger ones, it's a good opportunity just to sort of shape up and just show some of the media and some of the fighting public here.
Pressure, even on a shadow box in front of this many people at a venue like this, when you've never done anything art for.
But like for me, if I was to do this, I'd be trying to turn a couple of heads, thinking, blimey, he's got quick hands, you know, he's not bad. And this helps you in the future for sure. Like you say, you got them little bit of jitters, those nerves, and they do help. It's another experience. It might not seem like it, but I'm telling you now, these little workouts that they do help.
She shared the ring with Gemma Ruegg, who we'll see on the bill as Shannon Courtenay's return opponent, also on Before the Bell. One of 5 contests on our pre-broadcast segment, starting at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, live on YouTube. Myself, Darren, Fabio Wardley will be taking you through the card. We'll be going live on 7 o'clock on DAZN PPV, live from the O2 5 contests on the bill, kicking off with Lyndon Arthur, Cesar Reynoso, Ellie Courtenay against the European champion Mary Romero, Felix against the undefeated Conor Coyle, Galal Yafai against Gohan Garcia. That could be a brilliant fight, just to peak the atmosphere ahead of what will be absolute fever pitch. And Conor Benn and Chris Eubank make their ring walks. 30 years since their fathers last did battle, and there is Ricky Hatton. Very nearly made his ring return not too long ago. Very nearly made his ring return not too long ago.
Well, it's been rescheduled, I think.
Yeah.
Back in training, looking well, Ricky. I don't think at any point, sorry Chris, would I want to take a left hook to the body from Ricky Hatton. Whether he was 60, 65, 70. I don't want, you'd never want to take a left hook to the body from Ricky Hatton.
No. For those of you just joining us, welcome to the Outlet building, just next to Tottenham Court Road. Top of the show, we addressed the breaking news story this morning surrounding Connor Benn, and we will be, on his arrival, hearing from Eddie Hearn in the studio, putting some questions to him, so stick with us. No doubt there are those of you that want to hear from him, and there will be...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, one more time out there. Let's get your hands together. Chloe Watson out here, undefeated flyweight from Birkenhead. That should be in the ring on Saturday night. Chloe Watson, ladies and gentlemen.
So Chloe Watson is third on the bill, I believe. Matty Harris, who I think may be on his way. There are train strikes today, so getting here has been a bit of a nightmare. I had to go around the houses to get in. Matty Harris will be second on the bill against Ziri Sunaj. He's been pretty good, Matty Harris, so far. 3-0 with 2 stoppages. Speaking to Fabio Wardley about him yesterday, said he's been out in Dillian White's training camp in Portugal. Big 6'7", heavyweight, relaxed, loose, good power as well. Another name to add to this mix of good prospects.
Absolutely. I like what I've seen from him. He's so dangerous with that right hand, and he almost measures it similar to how Vladimir Klitschko used to. Really pours it out, finds his distance and his range with a shot, and he just comes firing down with the right hand. Looks like he can really hit with that shot, also with the left hand, and I like the way he moves his feet so quickly for a big lad. So, yeah, I mean, he's in for a good ride.
Yeah, certainly is. So he'll be working out, I think, next up, unless it's too late, and we'll get Shannon Courtenay in the ring. She is ringside as well, ahead of her ring return, losing the world title to Jamie Mitchell. Had that knee heavily strapped up and has had a massive reconstruction on it. A very, very difficult year for her. She's kind of taken a lot of flack from the public as well. She's aware of all of that. She did SAS Are You Tough Enough before the knee surgery, but she feels that she's back in a good place and ready to show that she's levelled up as a fighter on Saturday night. There's a lot of pressure on her shoulders. She's been under a lot of scrutiny in the last year.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where, and I'm not sure if we'll see it Saturday, but where her desire and her hunger's at. You know, she kind of, you see it sometimes with some of these fighters that go down the celebrity route. It's a lot easier to make money that way. I mean, I don't fancy going on SAS anytime soon, but
not if you had to carry me down the beach, your hip would come out.
I would never be able to do that, no. But yeah, I just want to see where her desire's at. No doubt she's a very good fighter, very confident, very slick and quick hands, etc. But where is her head with this? So be interested to see that.
Great stuff. Well, next fighters are ready to head into the ring, so let's go back to David.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the media workout continues. Our next fighter making his way up to the ring. He fights out of Leamington. He's undefeated, 3-0, 2 knockouts. Ladies and gentlemen, Magic Matty Harris.
Big, relaxed Matty Harris, trained by Evan Cleary out of Cleary's gym in Leamington. And I remember in the very, very early days, about 10 years ago, my career, we did an event for them. They streamed it online, one of the local leisure centres, and first taste of a bit of commentary, a bit of presenting at Cleary's boxing gym. And this young man lived in a caravan on Edwin Cleary's drive in the build-up to his professional debut. So if you ever wonder the kind of sacrifices fighters make in terms of saving money on rent and bills, that is it. And not be funny, this isn't a flyweight living in a caravan. That's a 6'7" man.
He's bigger than a caravan.
He probably is, yeah.
I honestly, Chris, I think he's going to be a handful. Excuse me. He's got everything. Sorry. So far that you need. And there's still boxes that need ticking. You know, his hunger, his desire. I'm talking about Shannon, but he's way off that level yet. But in those tough fights, you find out if you've got heart, etc. I'm sure he has bundled with it, but from a technical side of things, I think he's a very, very good fighter. He's got quick hands, he can punch, which you need to as a heavyweight, but he can move his head and his hands. His reactions are so quick. And like I say, he could be a real problem in the heavyweight division.
You see that kind of low left hand. He's quite an upright fighter, relaxed, economical, smooth mover. And he was good in the finish against Metzlis when he dropped him for the first time. Kept his composure, ended it with a huge uppercut. Really was cold as ice, and made some improvements between his first 2 or 3 pro fights. Looked sharper, moved better, and more variety. Stiffer jab, heavier body shots against Chukowski, who was counted out at the end of the first round. He dropped the man twice, didn't panic when he had him hurt, and kind of overpowered all of his opponents so far. Was caught a couple of times upright by Chukowski. And again, that's another box that will have to be ticked as the career goes on. How does he hold a shot from the guys that can whack? We know that the likes of Kamil Sokolowski, who heavy, physical, strong, always fit to fight, and test these young prospects at this kind of early stage of their career. In the next 3 or 4, you'd expect him to be in someone of that ilk, and he's got the tools. He should handle somebody like Sokolowski with ease there. And actually, in terms of Dillian White's training camp, I know it was wasn't a good performance from White against Fury, but stylistically, you kind of see why they brought him in for preparation.
Absolutely, got that low left hand, quick hands, very elusive, good variation as well. Likes to throw the uppercut. Yeah, I do feel he can be a real problem.
We'll get Fabio Wardley's thoughts on him on Saturday night. We'll be boxing Nathan Gorman for the British title, we think, before the year is out. And of course, with that, he'll be vacating the English, and there'll be the likes of Solomon Dakers. This young man too will be having their eye on that as the first stepping stone in the heavyweight division. So this is the third contest on our pre-broadcast segment before the belt, starting at 4 o'clock. Matty Harris and Jiri Sunaj, a couple more, Shannon Courtenay and Harlem Eubank from Adam Boo's gym, will take us through to the feed at 7 o'clock live at the O2 on DAZN pay-per-view. And here's a little bit of information on how you can purchase one of the biggest fights of the year on Saturday night.
Chris Eubank Jr. takes on Connor Benn live on DAZN pay-per-view. To watch this event, sign up for DAZN first to access live boxing. Choose a monthly plan, then add the pay-per-view event. If you're already a DAZN subscriber, sign in, select the event, and follow the steps to buy. Don't miss Chris Eubank Jr. takes on Connor Benn. October 8th, live on DAZN pay-per-view.
So DAZN pay-per-view, Saturday night live from the O2 Arena around the world. Chris Eubank Jr. and Connor Benn in our main event in London. Welcome to those who are just joining us. Matty Harris just in the ring, going through his open workout with his trainer ahead of big night for him on Saturday night. Co-promotion between Wasserman and Matchroom Boxing. We'll see a number of fighters from each promotion on the pre-broadcast and the broadcast segment. Like so Linden Arthur, Ellie Scottney, Felix Cash, Galal Yafai, all in action ahead of our main event. You can see the man on one half of the bill in the background, Chris Eubank Jr. back home preparing in Brighton for this one. Still no real word on if there's going to be a surprise addition to his corner on Saturday night. If we can grab a word with him at the end of his workout later on, we will. But of course, there was that news this morning that has just changed things a little bit in terms of the narrative today, and we'll definitely be speaking to Eddie Hearn in the next 20 minutes or so when he arrives at the venue here at the Outer Net in Tottenham Court Road.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it out there once again. Magic Matty Harris, undefeated heavyweight from Leamington, 3-0, 2 knockouts. You're going to see him on the night, Saturday night, in action. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Our next competitor coming into the ring for the media workout. Fighting out of Watford, 7-2, 3 knockouts. Ladies and gentlemen, the former WBA Bantamweight Champion of the World, the baby-faced assassin, Shannon Courtenay.
It's almost exactly a year to the day that Shannon Courtenay last boxed. Was October 9th, Saturday night, of course, October the 8th. She said, I'm actually kind of relieved it's a day out. I feel like it may have been a weird or a bad omen had it been exactly the same day, but 366 days for Shannon Courtenay. Not been an easy year for her. Went into that contest with Jamie Mitchell. Didn't have a good fight week, didn't have a good fight at all, had those knee problems, but fallout from that just has given us some time to introspect, think about her position in boxing, what she's done so far, what she needs to work on outside the ring, inside the ring as well. Back in the gym earlier this year working with her physio, had 2 operations, an ACL reconstruction that wasn't 100% successful, then had something called a cyclops lesion nodule in her capsule, couldn't straighten her leg. That first surgery November 23rd, second surgery 31st of May. But seems, touch wood, that things are better than they've been at any point in the last couple of years, and she seemed positive. I spoke to her on the phone earlier on this week, and we will be catching up with her in the studio after she's gone through her open workout with Pfizer Akbal on the pads.
She looks happy. She looks very happy to be back. Plenty of smiles. I was watching her walking around before she got in the ring. Yeah, she's enjoying herself. This is, I heard her say before, you know, this is a happy place. She loves boxing. She's really taken to it. I think she must be over the moon that these injuries are behind her and she can push on and try and recapture that world title.
She's made a couple of stylistic changes after a conversation with Adam Boot when she returned to the gym earlier on this year. She said she's much happier with her style and a couple of the adjustments that are made. She feels like she can express herself a little bit more, and she said you'll see shades of that in the ring on Saturday. Her opponent, Gemma Ruick, 5-4-1. Has improved in her last 2 or 3 fights. She's had 3 or 4 of those wins this year, and she's quite a mover, quite quick on her feet, a little bit awkward, darting in and out. Courtenay will have to be patient with her. She's got 8 rounds scheduled in our 4th contest on Before the Bell this Saturday night. And ultimately, if she feels her performance is a good one at the end of it, then she will want to get back in the mix as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Look, you know, you talk about tweaks, etc. there, and look, for me, I think Shannon Courtenay offensively, she's very good. I think she's got quick hands, she's powerful, she's got good footwork. I think it's just, and look, and this may be the injury that she had with the knee, but just defensively sometimes she was latched onto the ropes too easy. A bit more head movement required. But again, she could have been stuck on the ropes because of that bad knee. Certainly against Mitchell, we see the heavy strap in, and that would have been the reason why. But I just feel it's, a bit more work defensively, because offensively she's like I say, she's very, very good.
So this fight's been made at £122 for her return. She did say she's still confident of going back to 118 and competing and getting in the mix there. Against Ebony Bridges, who of course beat Maria Cecilia Roman to take the IBF title a few months ago in Leeds. That's a big fight down the line. There's still no love lost between the pair of them, and it is Bridges who holds a world title now at bantamweight. So we'll wait to see how Shannon Courtenay looks on her ring return after 1 year out of the ring. And at this point, welcome Eddie Hearn to the studio. Just arrived at the Outernet building. Eddie, obviously the news today, which you're going to be asked, I'm sure, to death about, is about Connor Benn. We saw the statement at the top of the show. When did you first become aware of the news? Did you get a heads up that this was going to be broken in the Daily Mail?
Yeah, I mean, I had a call from Riyadh this morning, and it's been going on behind the scenes. Obviously, we saw the Daily Mail article this morning. I think we've just seen the British Boxing Board of Control statement, which is pretty straightforward, and it's with the lawyers going backwards and forwards right now. Both guys signed up to a multitude of testing for this fight. The UCAD testing, which is obviously the testing agency that the British Boxing Board of Control use and are governed by, have all been clear and negative, and there was an adverse finding on VADA test previously. So there's not been an official doping violation. There's a process that has to be gone through. Connor Benn is not suspended by the British Boxing Board of Control. Ultimately, he can't be because he's passed all the tests from UCAD, but clearly the British Boxing Board of Control will take a position on it. We'll deal with the lawyers. Both camps have been made aware, of course, previously to the article coming out about the situation, and both camps prepared to progress with the fight. But ultimately, the conversations have to be had with the lawyers and the teams and the British Boxing Board of Control. Have
you spoken to Connor this morning, and when will we likely to hear from him, do you think?
You'll see him here. I mean, look, it's a very difficult situation from him. Obviously, we've seen previously people make their mind up before any news or information or evidence comes out. So it's a very difficult time for him. He'll be in here, going through the process, and it's a difficult time for everyone. Chris Eubank, anyone's going to feel sorry for us, but we've put a lot of work into this show, and we'll see what happens from here. But like I said, from Eubank's side, from Connor Benn's side, they feel the fight should progress. He's not suspended by the British Boxing Board of Control, but ultimately they're the governing body, and we will have to have conversations with them through the lawyers and to see where this process ends.
I know you've got an exceptional working relationship with the Sauerlands, and I know your lines of communication would have been positive this morning, but is there any chance that this has any implications for the contracted weight on Friday, the rehydration clause, or any of the stipulations under which this fight was agreed Saturday night?
Yeah, maybe. I don't think really that's the talking point at the moment. The talking point is to get everybody comfortable with the position. This is not Wasserman and Eubank just went, yeah, we'll just crack on. This is, they've examined the adverse findings. They've had medical advice from experts regarding these trace findings in these, and are prepared on the basis of, Calla will talk further on that finding, to proceed with the bout. So everybody's comfortable with what they've seen from that side. So obviously the board, as of now, aren't comfortable with that, and we respect that, and we'll go through the process with them to ultimately see where that lands.
If the worst happens and the fight doesn't take place, will the show still go ahead?
Unlikely, I think, in all honesty. I mean, look, firstly, there is currently no reason in terms of suspension or violations that the fight should not take place. So the board actually, I mean, you remember a situation with Billy Joe Saunders where he actually tested positive with VADA ahead of the Andrade fight. The board did not suspend him because they don't recognise VADA, but Massachusetts did. So there's a complicated process to go through. Eubank Benn is the fight. Ultimately, that's if that fight doesn't take place, nor will the show. But we have to see where we go from here, because if the board aren't suspending Connor Benn, and they won't suspend Connor Benn, they don't have the right to under their jurisdiction with the test that he's been passing with UCAD, then if they're not allowing the fight, when do they allow the fight? Are we saying there's a delay while you want to have a hearing and we postpone the fight for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? You're not going to suspend Connor Benn. So at some point, the fight is going to take place. So, it's fresh at the moment, and I'm happy to come on here and give everyone as much news as I can, but at the same time, there's a process that will be undertook.
All right, Eddie, I really appreciate you coming to speak to us. Thanks very much. We'll get a bit more information as it comes in the next day or two. Right now, back to the open workout. Shannon Courtenay is no longer in the ring. That is Linden Arthur, who will be kicking things off on the main broadcast, 7 o'clock on the DAZN pay-per-view. Last in against Walter Sequeira, former opponent of Anthony Yards, a while after he was defeated in that rematch. Didn't really turn up in that rematch, Linden Arthur, Darren, and you have to say at this point, if people were questioning his desires at boxing, you can understand why, but he needs to look good and sharp on Saturday.
Yeah, look, I don't want to say anything away from Anthony Yards in that he didn't look the same fighter. That's true, Arthur, but neither did Anthony Yards. He was fired up. He had the bit between his teeth, and he really, really wanted to right that wrong. So I don't want to take too much away from Yard in that. But you're right, the first fight, he was tremendous. Showed us what a great jab he had, was so disciplined. Was there an injury with the right hand? I can't remember.
He boxed left-handed for essentially the whole fight.
Basically the whole fight, wasn't it? And showed us that when he's switched on and he's on point, he's a very hard man to beat. This is all about rebuilding now. It's about getting the confidence back. It's about getting another win and ultimately getting back for fighting for big titles, because he is that good. It's just about I mean, I've mentioned this word a few times already today, but desire, hunger. If it's still there, he's got the ability to still push on and win some titles.
Okay, well, Linden Arthur just winding down his workout here and heading into the ring next. Stablemate of Shannon Courtenay, one of Alan Booth's fighters, Harlem Eubank. To bring him into the ring momentarily will be David Diamante.
All right, let's hear it out there, ladies and gentlemen. King Linden Arthur, right here. Linden Arthur, ladies and gentlemen, nice round of applause out there. Our next fighter making his way to the ring, 15-0, 6 knockouts, and being a super lightweight affair, fighting out of Brighton. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it out there for Harlem Eubank.
Harlem Eubank, 15-0 now, 28 years of age, made his debut in his home city of Brighton, where he's been helping Chris Eubank with his preparations ahead of a huge night on Saturday night. It's 4th time out this in a busy 2022, February 5th at the Motorpoint Arena, fought Vero Simeon. May 13th at the Indigo, fought Sean Dodd, won that in 2, that are beautiful left hook on the counter. And stature-wise, speed-wise, he's more similar to Connor Benn in terms of replicating stuff in sparring for Eubank. No doubt he's been integral to Chris Eubank's preparations down in Brighton, and of course getting himself ready for a fight of his own. His opponent, David Campillo, 11-3-1, 35 years old, from Palma de Mallorca. And Harlem Eubank's last contest, Darren, was absolutely bizarre. He was in against a heavy-handed Mexican, was in control of the contest, but was hit a couple of times after the break. And for those of you that haven't seen it, was hit with a savage 1-2 after the referee had called break. He was dropped and essentially stopped. But of course, because it was after the call of break, he was given 5 minutes recovery time, and he needed absolutely all of it to gather himself in the corner. And never seen anything like it. It's that situation where the referee's well within his rights to give him the right to use those 5 minutes. I think if he hadn't been ready to step back to centre ring and believe he could come out and win the fight, it would have been a disqualification. But he was. He continued to box for a couple of rounds. The same thing happened again, and his opponent was waved off in 9. But, well, you always think you've seen everything in a boxing ring.
Yeah, it was bizarre, like you say, Chris. It really was. It was the Mexican's moment to try and change his life, and he went a bit overboard.
Ran away with it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But Harlem is a good fighter. I've been impressed with what I've seen of him. He's a relaxed rhythm fighter, gets busy behind the jab, razor sharp reaction. So if he makes you miss, he'll make you pay. He throws a lovely left to the body, really does. He slips in the inside of certainly the orthodox stance and throws a lovely left, like I say, to the body, doubles it up to head as well. Very, very quick hands, and it's kind of gone under the radar slightly when you think of Chris Eubank Jr. and Connor. But yeah, he's decent. He's improving all the time. That, though, was a horrible experience he went through last time. It's still an experience, something he can sort of learn from and understand that you're going to be in there with some tough nuts that will bend the rules slightly. So I think it's about getting the wind behind his back again, move on to bigger things, and he's probably not too far off titles, Chris.
Dalton Smith, of course, the new British champion at 140 pounds, but he's well ranked with the EBU as well, Harlem Eubank. You look at domestic competition for Smith, of course, in with Casey Benjamin. It's a title defence in the next few weeks. Harlem Eubank is going to be knocking on the door of that sort of challenge himself as well. In the pads with his trainer Charlie B, working alongside Adam Booth. In the stable with Nick Conlon, who was in one of the fights of the year, if not the fight of the year. We'll have to see when all is said and done with Lee Wood in Nottingham a few months ago. Worked in kind of reverse order here. We just saw Linden Harlem jumping for a quick shadow box. He will be opening the show on DAZN. Harlem Eubank will not be on the broadcast segment as it currently stands. He'll be on the before the bell segment. Ring walking round about 20 past 6. Of course, it will all be subject to change based on how long or short the other contests on the show go. And if you're just joining us, welcome to you. We'll be seeing his stablemate Shannon Courtenay in her ring return just before. Chloe Watson, Ricky Hatton's fighter as well. Big Matty Harris, Max McCracken managed fighter, Edwin Cleary trained too. George Liddard, young debutant under Tony Sims, opening the show. Hearing just from my producer Gary, 3:45 looks like the start time. We'll have that confirmed for you for sure after the press conference and the weigh-in on Friday. Kelly Scottney in action. We'll see her go through her open workout shortly too, in a really, really interesting scrap with Mary Romero. For those of you that follow her last couple of fights, you know just what a danger she is. A real acid test for Scottney en route to a world title. We'll be talking about that as both fighters go through their open workout here at the Outnet building in Tottenham Court Road. Chris Lloyd here alongside Darren Barker will be your commentary team for the pre-broadcast segment on Saturday, with Big Fabio Wardley, the current English heavyweight champion, fighting for the British towards the end of the year. Felix Cash in action as well. Seeing him go through his paces after a difficult year. He's been out on the Isle of Wight sparring, preparing with Connor Benn. Been down to see the pair of them spar? Felix and Connor Benn?
I didn't see them spar. No, I see Jordan Reynolds spar with Felix. Jordan would be out on 29th of October.
Of course.
On the Katie Taylor belt. But no, I've not seen that. Just nice and relaxed, didn't he, Harlem? See the razor sharp hands there. Very, very quick, accurate puncher as well. Doesn't waste much.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, make some noise out here. Harlem Eubank in the ring. Clap your hands out here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look alive, all right? There we go. Our next fighter making her way into the ring. She'll be defending her European title. Please welcome de Murcia, España, Mary Romero, European Super Bantamweight Champion. 10 rounds Saturday night.
So the European Super Bantamweight Champion making another defence of her title on Saturday night. And on our travels, Darren, with a three-man team of you, myself, and Mike Costello, we've seen her fight twice up close in the last 8 months. Amy Timlin, the first one, a big opportunity for her, and well, it was girl against woman, wasn't it, in that particular contest. Physical, strong Romero, and lives in the gym. And we saw then just the difference. And of course, we saw Sandy Ryan as a young prospect, just like off a little more than she could chew. First time against Erica Farias. We saw the same with Timlin against Romero. We'd also seen a talented-looking Italian national champion, Maria Cecchi, who did all the right things in her first contest, really come unstuck against Romero in a strange contest.
I've got to be honest, Chris, right, in all the years I've followed boxing, and I was sat there commentating, and you're trying to remain impartial. But
you sounded fed up, frankly.
It was a horrible fight. I've never really wanted to see someone lose as much as I did Maria Cecchi. She headbutted Romero midway through the fight, really got a nasty cut, and it just wound me up. It was the most deliberate headbutt I've ever seen in boxing. Like, how she didn't get disqualified, I do not know. And I was so glad that Romero come through and won the contest. Yeah, she's a handful, like you say. She lives in the gym, she's fit, she's game. Once she gets in a rhythm, she just doesn't stop. She kind of, she tries to break you down and outwork you. And Ellie Scotty's going to have to be at her best for sure, because she's a tough opponent. She really is.
Yeah, the styles will contrast on Saturday night. Romero, she's not a smooth fighter like Courtenay is. She's got a jerky rhythm, and there is the back of the head of Cat's finest, Ellie Courtenay, who's just improved fight by fight. Getting a little bit more distance between herself and her opponents, and well, she boxed Maria Cecilia Roman a few months after Ebony Bridges ground her way to a world title at 118 pound. That was up at 122, and Courtenay made light work of Roman. And I think for either of these women, given the quality of the opposition they faced in certainly the last year, for Romero, she gets past Courtenay at this stage, given her amateur pedigree, given who she's beaten in the last 6 months. She's absolutely earned her right to vacate the European and move up to a world title shot at 122.
Without doubt, and that's why this fight's so interesting, because the pot of gold for the winner's huge. It really, really is. For Scotland to be the European champion, massive, and for Romero to push on to potentially fight for a world title is massive. I must say, I don't think, I know we're going to be talking about Ellie in a minute when we see her, but I don't think we've seen the best of Ellie Courtenay yet. I think there's more to come from Ellie, and she's going to have to perform better probably than she did last time out to beat Romero, because like you say, that opportunity for her to push on and fight for a world title is very close now, and a realistic option for her if she was to get past Ellie. So I think when you throw it all in the hat, we're in for a good fight with this one.
Yeah, and you can see here, this is very much what she does. She sits down on her shots, punches through the target, she lets her hands go in combinations, and she's not too concerned about what she hits. She'll hit what she can, and a fighter like Ellie Courtenay, who sharp, hot shotting, will look to try and catch her with hooks on the way in, and I think the sharper, cleaner work will come from Courtenay. The heavier work will likely come from Romero.
Yeah, she's unfazed as well. Maria Cecchi come in with this great sort of amateur pedigree, really touted to go on and do big things, and she didn't care. She ripped up the script, she got in Cecchi's face. It was messy, it was scrappy, but that wasn't down to Romero. She wanted a fight, she wanted to get stuck in. It was Cecchi that was holding and spoiling, and that's one thing for sure. Ellie won't have to go looking for Romero. She'll be there in front of her. She'll have to stay switched on. She does throw wide shots. She throws shots down the middle. Good variation. She's experienced enough to cause Ellie problems. But like I say, it's when you put everything on the line and what's at stake, I think it's going to be a brilliant fight.
Yeah, of course, for the winner, if it's Ellie Courtenay, her first European title. If it's Mary Romero, certainly she's done her due diligence at European level and will have kind of completed the rounds in Europe, and by the likes of Jackie Nava, Dina Thorson, Yamileth Mercado, Segalina Lefebvre, Mariana Juarez, all potential options for her as well. There is your European champion at 122.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, round of applause for Mary Romero. She's the European Super Bantamweight champion. Let me tell you something. This fight might be one of the sleepers on the card. And I mean that. If you've seen Mary fight, if you've seen Ellie fight. And speaking of, we're going to go ahead at this time and bring the challenger up for the European Super Bantamweight champion, fighting out of Catford, London, England, 5-0, Ellie Courtenay. Courtenay.
Well, we saw a career best performance to this point from Ellie Courtenay in her 5th contest a few months ago against Cecilia Roman. Kept a distance from the former champion at 118 pounds, boxed and moved to a clinical victory over 10 rounds, and a tough scrap with Miley's Gangloff before that too, and we just wondered whether she was kind of being thrown in with some experienced fighters a little too early. We know how hard, and we say it time and again, how hard it is for women like Ellie Courtenay with brilliant amateur pedigree to get the experience at a lower level and then bridge the gap. Those in-between fighters are very, very hard to find, and Mary Romero is certainly not a stepping stone for Ellie Courtenay, and for those of you that haven't seen her, go and do your prep, do your homework. This is a really, really tough fight, and can't overstate how good a victory for Ellie Courtenay would be on Saturday night over somebody as good as Mary Romero. You and I have seen her up close in her last couple of fights.
No doubt. But I do feel Ellie can come through this one. Like I say, she's going to have to be at her best, but I feel there is more to come from Ellie, and that's saying something. Like you say, she has been matched hard, but I think it's done her the world of good, if I'm honest, and she's starting to really, really look good, I think. She's well schooled, she's got very, very good ring high IQ. She's smart. She's switched on. She sometimes can get drawn into a bit of a fight when I think sometimes when she just takes a step back and uses her, superior boxing skills, she can make boxing easy. But she likes to excite. She likes to get stuck in, and that's why we like Ellie Courtenay. She's always trying to impress.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, let's make some noise out here. Ellie Courtenay, she's challenging for the European Bantamweight Championship, Super Bantamweight Championship, and I'll tell you, it's going to be an incredible fight. I know it will be, so look out for this fight. All right, Ellie Courtenay right here, ladies and gentlemen. All right, our next fight that we're going to go ahead and bring the fighters in for, 10 rounds for the WBA Intercontinental Middleweight Championship. And right now making his way into the ring. By the way, both of these fighters are undefeated, so it's a Nixon-Hill fight. Right now making his way into the ring, 17-0 with 7 knockouts, fighting out of Derry, ranked number 9 in the world by the WBA. He's the reigning and undefeated NABA champion. Ladies and gentlemen, Connor, the Kid Coyle.
Commonwealth Games bronze medalist from Glasgow in 2014. Derry's Connor the Kid Coyle. Undefeated 32-year-old. Lives in Florida these days. Very, very tall at the weight as well. And this will be his first bout in the UK. He's ranked 9 by the WBA at middleweight, so this is a very good opportunity for Felix Cash, not just to shake a little bit of extra ring rust off after a difficult last victory, but to start to really put himself in a solid position with one of the ranking bodies and hope to challenge for what he thinks will be a world title at some point next year. Coyle had to turn down a very short notice fight with Eubank Jr himself last October. He's only given 6 days notice and he's keen to get what will be a career-defining win under his belt this week and get into the mix with the winner of the main event. We'll see. Certainly he'll be a big underdog in this contest, regardless of an unbeaten record, but the win over Felix Cash, Darren Sutton, rockets him right into the mix, and he'll have options ahead of him.
Yeah, absolutely. Connor's a good fighter. He's well balanced, always in the right position to throw shots, doesn't tend to fall over the front foot, which he certainly can't afford to do against someone like Felix Cash. Got a lovely jab, he's got good variation with the shot. He'll follow it up back upstairs with a right hand over the top. He's comfortable on the back foot, as he is. I mean, look, I think his natural go-to is to creep forward on the front foot and try and push opponents back, but he's equally as accomplished on the back foot. Like I say, he's well-schooled, really enjoys the sport, but he'll have to have the performance of his life, I think, to overcome Felix Cash, who, let's get it right, he's had some problems out of the ring, but he's regrouped, and he's a tough man to beat, Felix. But 2 unbeaten fighters in there, going to put it all on the line, and anything can happen in this sport, Chris.
Hall of Fame trainer Jim McLaughlin, trainer of Winky Wright, has been in his corner for a few years now. He's guided him to 17-0 unbeaten record. He became American Boxing Federation America West middleweight champion in 2021. He's boxed a number of times in Mexico. Became North American Boxing Association middleweight champion as well. Another vacant belt, winning a 10-round split decision over the 13-5 Atlanta native Antonio Todd. boxed on a few big undercards at the National Stadium in Dublin in his younger days, but hasn't ever boxed on home soil in Northern Ireland. And this will feel almost a foreign opportunity for him on a big stage against a very good fighter in Felix Cash. That we have to be honest, Darren, there are just a couple of question marks over because of the year he had outside of the ring last year, and being dropped in his last contest, had to survive a couple of torrid rounds in that fight. Showed a lot of heart and spirit to get through it, to scrape the win. But of course we don't know what that year and the life that he lived outside of it by his own admission has done to his performances in the ring, and we need confirmation that Felix Cash is still the fighter that he was before everything happened last year, don't we?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm only going by what I've seen in the gym and what I've heard from Tony. They're still confident he can go all the way. He's tough, he's durable and well schooled. He can punch, which you need to at the middleweight, in the middleweight division. Sorry. Look, this is boxing. You can get dropped. It's about getting up and showing that toughness and that desire and that will to win. Sometimes you can quite easily start feeling sorry for yourself and, you know, and get overawed by occasions and opponents and basically swallow it. But he didn't. And it's about, look, there are going to be tougher tests still out there for sure, and Connor will definitely pose threats, that's for sure. He's a very, very good fighter. He's got a beautiful jab and that sets everything up. But yeah, for Felix, it's about momentum. It's about getting busy again after that time off, and let's see how far he can go. But I'll say it one more time. You're looking at a man here who's looking to change his life. He's looking to be the guy that everyone's talking about.
For those of you just joining us, welcome. There is Conor Coyle in the ring at the moment, ahead of clash with Felix Cash. Over 10 rounds, a WBA ranking place. He's the prize for the winner. Coyle coming 9th with the WBA. This will be 3rd on our live broadcast segment on DAZN pay-per-view, live around the world. Actually starts at 7 o'clock local time in London. And there is his opponent Felix Cash and Tony Sims. And a smile for Tony Sims, but no doubt this morning will have been a stressful one. You know Tony well, Darren. It's rocking news, this, isn't it, what we've had this morning?
Yeah, crazy, absolutely crazy. But Tony, he has other fighters on the bill, and he's got a job to do, and you know we're not too sure what's going to happen yet, are we? But he's got to remain professional and do his right by his fighters.
Is he normally pretty calm?
Very,
like this? Yeah.
Very calm.
Never see him ever change.
Told me off once. Well, that was inside the ring. He told me off a few times outside of the ring.
So, yeah.
But generally very calm, and I think that on top of his ridiculous knowledge on fighters and tactical techniques and all sorts, why I feel he's the best trainer in the country. Yeah, very, very calmly influenced, and certainly, you know, if there are ever tough rounds, certainly Felix come across, and a lot of his other fighters will experience at some point. He's just in that minute's break. He just has a way of calming you down, getting you to focus on clear, precise instructions. And he just has a knack of being able to draw the best out of you. I've said this time and time again. I could not and would not have won a world title if it wasn't for Tony Sims.
Our ladies and gentlemen, Conor the Kid Coyle. He's undefeated, and as his opponent, now making his way to the ring from Workingham, Reading, ladies and gentlemen, the former British and the reigning and undefeated Commonwealth and WBC International Middleweight Champion, Felix Cash. Cash.
Well, he's had a crucial role, former British Commonwealth champion Felix Cash, in preparing Connor Benn for the biggest fight of his professional career on Saturday. He's been over in the Isle of Wight. Certainly has really paid his dues in boxing. I remember seeing him in his first 3 or 4 fights on the smaller hall circuit without the fanfare. There were some very, very good fighters around his weight. Ben Whittaker coming through, of course, on GB 5 or 6 years ago, and he was always there or thereabouts in the amateurs. Just when you're not the number one, hard to get the international experience, the exposure that gives you that launch pad into the professional game. So he had to do so quietly under the radar. In the last 4 or 5 fights, things have really started to come together, culminating with a brilliant win over Denzel Bentley for the British and the Commonwealth title. Just absolutely blitzed him in 3. Nobody's done that to Bentley so far, and of course he is now looking at a title shot against Annabek Allen Carnley in a couple of months' time. But we know the difficulties that Cash had outside of the ring last year in that contest when he returned against Magomed Madiev, who I think was as good as people on the circuit thought he was going to be, and there were some very, very tricky moments in there for Felix Cash. He got through it by the skin of his teeth, but he knows that he'll need to be better than that and be back to the version that we saw against Denzel Bentley if he's going to go on to challenge for world titles next year.
Yeah, I mean, the fight with Madiev was almost a fight of 2 halves, wasn't it? It started very well, and Madiev crept back into the contest. He was tough, he was game, he was rugged, he was hard. Something that Felix hadn't really come across as far in his career. So you look at that and you think, well, when you take everything into account, especially what was going on outside of the ring, and that no one will make it. We can make the excuses for Felix. He won't. I think you can look at that as a box tick. He did come through it. It was a hard night for him, don't get me wrong, but he showed something that you can't teach. And that's toughness, and that's durability, and he showed that night.
Yeah, we may grab a word with Felix after his open workout. May grab a word with Felix after this open workout. In terms of replicating Chris Eubank, I mean, he is a completely different fighter to Eubank. We've seen a much more patient back foot Eubank in the last 3 or 4 fights. Cash, of course, is all out pressure and aggression, but at some point in this contest, expect Eubank to start to sit and trade a little bit more with Ben. Maybe play the matador early, try and bring him onto shots, but of course turn that tide as the fight goes on. And in terms of an aggressive, heavy-handed pressure fighter with a great engine, you're not going to get much better preparation. Connor Benn, than somebody like Felix Cash.
He's relentless, Felix. He doesn't spar lightly. He really lets his hands go, and he fights at a very good tempo. So, yeah, I mean, look, fast forward to the main event, it is interesting, you know, if this fight does go ahead, what the tactics will be for Chris Eubank. Will he sit back, like you say, whether an early onslaught from Connor and try and get his size weight into the contest? But yeah, it's intriguing. I am really looking forward to this one, though. Like I say, 2 unbeaten fighters with so much to lose. You know, as far as rankings are concerned, they're very close, challenging for something very significant. So a win can really catapult them to bigger and better things, and a loss is, you know, you're rebuilding and starting again, which is the last thing you want to do when you're getting yourself into this sort of position.
So we are about 15 or 20 minutes away now from our main eventers heading into their open workouts after a shock day of news breaking this morning, lots of conversation across social media as well. We will see both fighters here this afternoon going through their workouts ahead of much uncertainty on Saturday night. We heard from Eddie Hearn about 45 minutes ago or so. Said that currently the board's position is that the main event could be off. I think it's in the hands of the legal teams. They are working through those issues, and I'd love to have more answers for you, but unfortunately that is the status quo as it happens. There's Tony Sims, all the work that's gone into preparing his fighters in camp over in the Isle of Wight. Already so much to think about. Not easy to maintain focus given everything that's already happened today, but as you say, he's got to get his fighters ready, and he knows that Felix Cash is in a really strong but also a tenuous position, because one defeat, as you say, can suddenly drop you so far down the rankings, and it could be all over for Felix Cash. He has to be on his game on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, I would say pressure isn't on Felix. I think he goes into this fight the favourite, doesn't he? You know, a lot of expectation from Felix. So he's going to have to certainly bring his A game and deal with that pressure of staying unbeaten, basically, because there is a big pot of gold for him. Well, look, for both fighters, obviously, but for him, he's the one touted to go on and do big things. So he'll have to deal with that pressure. How
much do you see? I know you pop into the gym now and again, see the way that the lads train, and I know you speak to Tony regularly. Do you see how he's training the lads now? Are his camps structured similar to how they were in your day? Has he changed a lot, do you feel, Tony?
Yeah, I think sports science and you know the need for real strength and conditioners, etc., has moved on. So that side of things has changed a little bit. They're very much on it, but it's a proven system that Tony's got. He works diligently on tactics and techniques and game plans, and one of the things that Tony tries to do is take the best part of ex-fighters and current fighters and mould them into your style. And if you can take little bits of attributes from certain fighters, you're not going to go too far wrong, are you?
Of course, this was your old division. You took you right to the top at middleweight. Has ever discussed the kind of any similarities between yourself and Felix? Any differences? Does he feel that he has the potential based on the work that he did with you, what he saw in the gym with you, knowing that was enough to take you all the way? That he feels that there is the potential in this man. What discussion have you had about Felix with Tony?
Yeah, I mean, it was more not recently, but when Tony's first started working with him, he used to say he reminds me of you.
Because I kind of feel there's little things there. Yeah.
I mean, he's better than me and better looking than me, but he's I think what he has shown is a lot of talent. He can punch. He is a big puncher with both hands, and he's got that real grit and nastiness that you need. I didn't really have that, but he does have it.
I feel like you had a more spiteful streak, and you're looking back at interviews and things when you were a fighter. You're much fluffier now. Certainly much flabbier now.
Oh, that's for sure. I was just very competitive, but I didn't have that nastiness. I don't mean it in a bad way, but you need it in boxing, and he really does feed off of it. And when he gets in there, he wants to hurt his opponents. He's a special talent, but we cannot look past Conor Benn. This is an opportunity for him.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Felix Cash, undefeated. Should be a really exciting fight on Saturday night. Working and ready, right here, Felix Cash. The media workout continues. Our next contest, 10 rounds for the WBC International Flyweight Championship. And at this time, we're going to go ahead and bring up the challenger. His professional record, 12 victories, 1 defeat, 1 draw with 1 knockout. He fights out of Gomez Palacio, Durango, Mexico. Damas y caballeros, here's the former WBC International Silver Flyweight Champion, Gohan Rodriguez Garcia.
So already in at the deep end for the Olympic gold medalist Galal Yafai, and another big challenge and an opportunity for him to secure a ranking place. No easy pushover. There's Gohan Garcia, switch hitter, 21-year-old Mexican, fighting outside of his native country for the first time. Made his debut in July 2017, opened with a handful of 4-rounders, as you'd expect. His only defeat came in his third fight, lost a majority decision in a 4-rounder to a fighter called Juan Carlos Vieira. And this is his third scheduled 10-rounder. Had a unanimous decision win against 15-1 Jorge Mendoza for WBC International belt, and a unanimous decision win for NABF title as well. Switch hitter, Darren, rarely uses the jab, tends to kind of lead with the right hand regardless of whether he's orthodox or southpaw. In theory, and theory and practice, two very different things. Should give Galal Yafai some rounds here, but the way he started his career has been so brilliant, and barely got out of second gear and dispatched of his opponent so far in good style.
I feel Garcia's undoing in this fight is his willingness to, though it's on the back foot, he likes to trade with opponents, and he's only got the one stoppage on his record. And I think that could be a horrific game plan against Galal Yafai, who's just got razor quick hands, and he generates so much power through that sharpness. Garcia, he just likes to, like I say, trade with opponents. He likes to sort of throw the right hand out the orthodox stance and throw the left hook, and then he'll switch and he comes square on. And he is a bit of a nightmare. He moves and he can be hard to pin down, but I feel at some point in the fight he'll look to trade with Galal just through, I guess, what he's used to doing, and he'll come unstuck.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, let's hear it up there. The challenger, Gohan Rodriguez Garcia. Sábado noche, O2 Arena here in London, England. All right. And now we're going to go ahead and bring up the defending WBC International Flyweight Champion. He's a southpaw. He's got a young professional record, only 2 fights. They're both wins, they're both knockouts. He fights out of the West Midlands, Birmingham, England, ladies and gentlemen. He is the 2020 Olympic gold medalist and the reigning, defending, undefeated WBC International Flyweight Champion, Galal Yafai.
I'll never forget his almost late notice qualification for the Rio Olympics. He joined the GB squad late in the day, was able to take Harvey Horn's place off him, went to Rio and came on stuck against a very good Cuban in 2016. Had to wait a long time to show his worth at the top level, and was one of the very best fighters of the tournament in Tokyo, coming away with the gold medal. He's been the pick of the Olympic prospects, and decided, given his age and the amount of time he had to sit waiting between his 24th and his 29th birthday, to get a move on with him straight into 10 rounders. Neither of the first two have gone that far, and I guess that's going to be the difference, isn't it? Not that he hasn't got the capability to go up the levels and compete at championship level. I had a good conversation with Sonny Edwards about the spars, and he said he's already at that level, but of course you've got to have that in-ring fight experience. He needs some rounds, this kid, doesn't he?
Yeah, of course, that's for sure. An exceptional talent, he really is. He's so exciting, he's so well schooled. I mean, there's every single box there ticks, bar experience. So you get that by doing exactly what you just said there, trying to get some rounds in the bank. I think he could settle down ever so slightly. Now, you know, he's already competing at 10 rounds, and when he moves to 12 rounds, it don't have to be as frantic. But he just looks to impress, he looks to get the stoppage, and I feel that's what he will get on Saturday night after a few rounds, which you know he'll be extremely hopeful for.
Brother Cal, who will be back out in the coming weeks as well, the former WBA champion, who's been sparring plenty with under the guidance of Rob McCracken, and he said, I've tried not to change too much. Of course, as you said, going up the number of rounds, learning to pace yourself differently, but in terms of his fundamentals, you always know which amateurs these days, and there is a little bit more crossover than there used to be in the kind of point-picking days between the amateurs and the pros, so you can always see which of the amateurs are going to make an easier transition. He was always going to make a good one, but of course it is now about in-ring experience. Been sparring with lads from the Everton Red Triangle, Andrew Kane, Nick Ball, who had a brilliant coming out party against Isaac Lowe a few months ago as well.
See, I don't think too much has to change other than what I just said previously about, you know, so slowing things down a little bit. I mean, you're always looking to improve and up your game, and you get that through plenty of work in the gym and that top-class sparring that we've also touched on earlier on in the show. But as far as even technically, he does everything that's required. You know, he keeps you thinking all the time. He's always looking to set traps. He's got very quick hands reaction. His footwork is impeccable, always trying to create angles to find different openings. So from a technical, you know, side of things, he's bang on. It's just about slowly starting to sit down on the shots a little bit more, and you do that by slowing things down slightly. You don't have to drop the pace dramatically, just slow it down a little bit. But I think he's got all the attributes, bar experience, to go on a long, long way and have a very, very good glittering career.
Well, we saw Galal Yafai there as well, the former European champion, back to winning ways after that defeat to Jason Cunningham. Cal as well out November 5th. And he's still up at GB. Said it's been slightly different year. Of course, the old class graduated after 4 or 5 years there, and just Harris, Artingstall and Lauren Price, I think, remaining up there with him as well, and a lot of young new amateurs coming up there. So he said, I just kind of keep myself to myself. I just keep my head down, get my sessions in, and big fights ahead for him. Potentially one with Sonny Edwards. Both of them a lot of respect for each other, sparred a lot over the years. Sonny really rates him, says he brings out a different side of Edwards altogether. And he said, I believe he absolutely will go all the way to world level and be pushing some of the very best in the world before you know it. There's Cesar Martinez, of course, WBC title, Artem Dalaki in the WBA, Junso Nakatani as well, and of course Edwards too. It is a really good division. Guys like Williams Arroyo in amongst them as well, Alvarado too. So what point does he take the step up in this fast-track professional career? We'll find out from him in just a couple of moments' time. He's the last fighter out of the ring, and our main eventers are on the way. We don't know when. So here's the Olympic gold medalist, Galal Yafai. Good to see you, mate. Come and jump on over there. Yeah, you're on that side.
Come here, mate.
Yeah, you're all in. It's not. We haven't got social distancing anymore, mate. Don't you worry.
Sorry, my bad.
And what summer you had? I remember seeing you at the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games, running with the torch. Just talk us through what an experience that was, first of all.
Yeah, it was wicked. I got asked to do it, and I was a bit tentative at first, but I thought, it'd be good in my city. The fact that I've been to Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, it's not too far from me, and yeah, it was good.
And we were talking about the long, patient wait that you had after, I know it was such a disappointing Rio 2016 games.
Yeah.
It all came good in the end in Tokyo. You were one of the fighters of the games. You came back as the hottest Olympic prospect on GB. The decision to fast track you, of course, because of your age and the weight division that you're in.
Yeah.
You haven't been able to get as many rounds in yet so far. What are you hoping for on Saturday night? What part does this play in your education, do you think?
I think a different test. The thing is, I watched him there and I've watched him before, and he's not your usual Mexican. He's a bit of a boxer.
Yeah.
He's
Switch
technical.
hits and
Yeah, he's switcher. He's a counter puncher. I'm used to that, the Mexicans being, or not just me, but everyone else used to Mexicans being tough, rugged, come forward, fit, strong. This guy's the opposite, really. He's a bit of a boxer, so I'm kind of used to that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Is it in your mind to try and get some rounds under your belt? We were just talking there, saying not blowing too much smoke up your backside, but there's every attribute there needed to go a long way, bar the experience, and you obviously get the experience through rounds. Are you thinking about, doing some distance fights and getting some rounds under your belt?
Sometimes, yeah. But then
You just want to knock everyone out.
Yeah, I want to please as well. Like, it's already bad enough me being a flyweight. We don't get the attention that maybe the heavyweights get. So if you can knock people out, it's a bit more interesting. I tried to do that, but I don't want to get carried too much. Get too much carried away with it because.
So in sparring, how many rounds are you doing? Are you doing 10, 12 rounds in sparring?
Yeah, well, I spar a lot with Carl. I spar a lot with all bigger lads, all
So you've been doing a few rounds of like Nick Ball, Andrew Kane, some of the Everton Red Triangle
Nick Ball,
boys?
Andrew Kane, and they're all top fighters. Carl's a former world champion. We've got Nick Ball, Andrew Kane, all top fighters, and a lot bigger than me as well, like 4 or 5 weights above me. So I'm doing 10 rounds, 12 rounds sometimes, but it's different in a fight, as you know, Darren.
We're just reeling off some of the champions at these weights. I know it's a little early for you to be looking at, but one man I know you spent a lot of time in the ring with is Sonny Edwards, and he speaks so highly of you, so respectful of your talents, and he said what brilliant spars you have, and it's a fight that, with respect, he said he'd love to have someone down the line so you can both get paid and put on a show for the fans. Is that in your mind as well?
I think so. I think, we've got a bit of a rivalry, the Edwards and Yafai rivalry. We sparred recently. We had good rounds, good 10 rounds for a few weeks for my debut, and in free fight as well. So I think it's inevitable, really. We kind of have to fight each other. But I don't want to speak too soon. He's a world champion, and I don't want to disrespect any world champions. I've only had 2 fights.
I know there's a process, climbing the rankings, etc. But you personally, and I know probably I'll get your answer, is going to be what we all expect. But how far do you think you are from those sort of fights, or competing for major honours? I don't want to get too carried away here. Do you know what I mean? Because it's still early on. But how far do you think you are from pushing right on?
I don't think I'm too far away. I'm not deluded, really. I'm in truthfulness. I'm saying I'm not too far away, but it's how you perform. Like, I could be brilliant on Saturday and people will say, yeah, he'll be fighting for a world title soon. Or I could be terrible and people will say he's not that good. He's no way near ready for them. So it just depends how good I look in my fights. And I've got to keep winning too.
Yeah, and of course, Rob McCracken in your corner has plenty of experience taking fighters to championship level. He won't rush you if you're not ready.
Yeah, Rob's, you know what Rob's like. He's smart, he's been around the game. He won't rush me, and hopefully I don't get rushed too much, but I need to do a bit of learning, and I still got to win. I still got to look good, so hopefully they're big fights down the line.
And I know what an amazing experience it was having your hand raised in that Olympic final. I was jumping for joy at home, but of course slightly tinged with difficulty because you had to wait a year. Of course, no crowds really there. This will be right at the top of the undercard here, just before the main event. The crowd will have filled up. It'll be fever pitch in the O2. That's going to be some experience for you as in terms of a career memory, this on Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. It's a privilege for me to fight on such a big show, and as a co-main event, it's a privilege, and I thank Eddie and Matchroom. For me, it's not really pressure. I just want to show how good I am, and I get to show it in front of more people now.
Good stuff. Well, listen, we wish you all the very best, and we'll speak to you at the press conference tomorrow. Galal, many thanks indeed. Galal Yafai and Gohan Garcia will be our chief support at the O2 on Saturday Night Live on the DAZN pay-per-view. Three of the nicest brothers in boxing, I think.
Yes. What a story. I mean, you've got the Smith family, which is tremendous, and then you've got the Yafai's, which is incredible. The talent that is within those families is unbelievable. Like, for two brothers to win 2 national titles in the amateurs is impressive, but for these families to be doing what they're doing, winning these medals and these titles in the amateurs and the pros, it's incredible. And again, you hear that saying, success breeds success. You get that a lot from sparring and being in the gym. But when you got brothers that are competing, they really, really get the best out of you. And you don't want to be the worst brother out of the lot. Do you know what I mean? So it's a tremendous story. It really is.
Well, both Cowan and Gamal have happily said we think he's the best of the bunch, and his credentials at the top of the amateur level speak volumes to that. Can he go all the way in the pros? He is being fast-tracked, and I think we're going to find out probably sooner than even most of us expect. So Galal Yafai will be our chief support on Saturday night. Now, we are, of course, waiting to hear news on Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr, who we hear are both on their way to the venue. We hear are both going to work out. We don't know if we're going to hear from the pair of them. We may get a word from Chris Eubank Jr. We hear Connor Benn will be releasing a statement given this morning's news a little bit later on. It has been, we have to admit, for those people that know us, they follow us, they've been doing this for 4 years. It's been an unusual start to fight week, possibly as unusual as I can remember feeling going into one of these open workout shows.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. It's sort of you get the news on the way here, then you're sort of in front of this desk in the camera. It literally has been that quick.
Especially when you're so excited ahead of a fight week of this magnitude, because we've done some of the biggest fights in the world. Very fortunate all over the world, you and I travelling around doing the build-up. This feels and has felt in the last 3 or 4 weeks almost as big as anything that we've covered, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly from my perspective, forget what's happened in the last hour or so, but the whole build-up to this fight, I'm instantly, and like a lot of guys my age and even older, my dad and my granddad's age, that remember the dad's boxing. So, sorry, mate, I'm back to you. You're going to make me jump.
You okay?
We're just talking about
always
Good to
welcome,
see you.
mate. Always
Mate,
welcome.
always nice to see you, boys.
And congratulations on your latest win with Rhiannon Dixon.
Mate, thank you
as
very
well.
much. Thank
really,
you. Enjoyed
really
it
coming
well.
together for her, isn't it? Not easy
Mate,
when you come from that white-collar background.
No, it is. It's you come from that. She's very, very inexperienced, but I know I spoke to her after and that. She's certainly shown improvements, and you know, I've said it, I believe with Rhiannon I've got a rough diamond, and I think in time she'll be ready for titles and stuff like that, but she's a great athlete and she's improving all the time. Yeah.
I was saying a couple of shows ago, I remember when you came to the gym with Alex Dimagani to help Carl Frampton prepare for Jamel Herring, and had a microphone on you filming that documentary and listening to the advice in the corner and thinking, he's going to make a really good coach, this guy. And you never know with ex-fighters how long it takes for them to have a bit of a break from the sport. You've kind of gone straight in. How do you find the process? You seem to have taken to it like a duck to water.
Do you know what, Chris? I'm really enjoying it, but I didn't plan on going straight into it. I planned on just staying with the amateurs and enjoying it, that, you know, with sort of the kids and the juniors, well, right through to seniors, but I ended up just sort of going straight into it, and I'm enjoying it. It's hard work, super hard work and that, and especially now I've been busy lately the last few weekends, and I've got a lad on Friday night. But no, I'm enjoying it, mate. I've been around in the corner, even when I was sort of passing up to show for years and doing amateur corner years ago. But it seems a lot more hands-on now.
What's the plan? To grow the stable and be the next best coach in the country?
No, listen, I always say it, that I just want to get the best out of, you know, the fighters, their ability, and listen, in time if other fighters come or not, there's always off, but at the minute I've not had the time, so I never want to shortchange anyone. I want to give him, you know, my full time, my full effort, and I just think if you get the best out of it, you know, to reach their potential, then titles are going to come in. You're going to get recognised as a coach automatically, aren't you?
But
so,
is this your career path now? You're a coach now?
You know what? I don't know. I think I'm still winging it. But no, sort of.
Can you see yourself in 20 years' time still being a coach?
Do you know what? Yeah, probably
like
can.
a little bowler hat.
I probably can, yeah.
Silver fox.
Or the flat cap. Yeah, there's probably a great chance I will be. I'll always be involved in boxing in some kind, and if it wasn't them, I'd be involved with the amateurs. So,
well, I tell you, from my perspective, I hope they know how lucky they are working with you, mate.
Mate, that means a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
Agreed. Well, Andy, always a pleasure to see you, mate.
Thanks for having us.
We'll see you in the next couple of days, and thanks for joining us.
We will do.
Cheers.
See you soon, boys.
Thank you very much. We'll shortly be joined by Mike Costello, who is going to be calling the main event on Saturday night, if, of course, it goes ahead. Still lots of questions to be asked. One of the questions is, where are our main eventers? We don't know yet, and we're waiting to hear news on their arrival, if they're going to go through the open workout. Lots of questions that we don't have answers to, and we didn't at the beginning of the day when the news broke about Connor Benn. So we'll be speaking to Mike very shortly. Let's talk about this fight, Darren, while we bring Mike into the studio. Oh no, he's just going away. Okay, he is coming in. Sorry, folks, we're finding out stuff as you are. Mike, all right, guys. Always good to see you. Listen, what a day of news. You've seen some things in your time, and about 3 hours ago, we were excited about this fight week, and now everything's in jeopardy.
Yeah, and just adds more uncertainty to this whole event. You know, I was just talking to RTE in Ireland this morning before I came over here, and it just rammed home to me how big this event was and is going to become for the rest of the week. And then suddenly, as I'm making my way over across London to get here, then you hear this news that, I mean, look, there'd been rumours around, I know that, but to get this kind of news is devastating, you know?
Yeah.
Whatever happens from here on, it's...
A lot of speculation and uncertainty. If the fight goes ahead, do you expect there could be some potential changes? We heard Eddie say earlier that Callum Howland has been accommodating. Chris Eubank is happy to go ahead. Is there potential that the other team could maybe use this as leverage to change the conditions under which the fight takes place? We know there's been a lot of back and forth about the weight, the rehydration clause. That obviously has implications of fighter safety. If there is the implication that they are sort of doing the matchroom side a favour, the Benn team a favour by going ahead with this fight, is there a case that they may try and leverage that situation and change the conditions under which the fight takes place on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely a possibility, but this is such a fluid story that, you know, in 10 minutes' time, what we're saying might be rendered obsolete. You know, I just don't know enough of the detail about this story yet to make a firm call on what's going on. You know, I've been studying even the substance that they're talking about, and my previous existence at the BBC involved a lot of stories of drug scandals, mainly in athletics. But over the years, I became quite conversant in how it all worked. And the substance that they're talking about here is one that is on the banned list of the World Anti-Doping Association, which is the rules and regulations that are followed by UKAD, United Kingdom Anti-Doping. And there is one quite important stipulation, but again, I'm talking really generally now. This is not about this fight or this case, but it just might help to give some kind of clarity. The World Anti-Doping Agency have 2 lists of banned substances. Well, it's one that's split into 2, and they divide them into what they call specified and non-specified substances. The specified substances are those which there might be some leeway. This is not legalese, but this is just me speaking generally. If you've tested positive for a specified substance, there might be a reason why that appeared in your system, and there might be a reason that the authorities are prepared to listen to, whether that is a contaminated batch or whatever. But the substance that we're talking about here is on the specified list, so there might be room for manoeuvre.
Yeah. And of course, that's where the legal grey area will lay in the next 2 or 3 days. Of course, the British Border Control have put out a statement saying, as far as they are concerned, so far the fight is off. That's been news that's come in to our ears and via Twitter in the last half an hour. So this could be ultimately decided in the courts.
Yeah, and they've got to work quickly.
Yeah.
Because the boxers have got to know, and the boxers down on the undercard. Yeah. Somebody was telling me today that one of you may have interviewed all of them, but somebody was telling me that, I won't mention who it is now, but somebody on this bill is going on holiday on Sunday and using the money that they're going to be paid to pay for the holiday. You know, that's boxing at the grassroots, at the basement level. You know, that's what some of these boxers are facing. You know, not necessarily at the highest level. It's a different game there, but everybody here is wanting answers, and that's why. Look, you know, the cynics will say all of this confusion, all of this controversy, all of this uncertainty is just adding to the ingredients for the fight. I'm not so sure.
That instantly, you know, when you see this, you think of the undercard, and if the fight doesn't happen, how hard each and every one of these fighters have worked for this moment, and what it does for their careers. You know, you look at the likes of Felix and Conor Benn, they're very close to potentially getting a world title shot, and it just slows everything down a little bit. Eddie said here, if the main event doesn't go ahead, that's the end of the show, and it's just such a shame for all of those guys.
What do you think about the cost implications for Shields and Marshall a few weeks ago, and the American fighters that come and base themselves over here? What do they do in those 4 weeks? But at least for them, there is a reschedule for this. If this was off Saturday, it might never happen again.
And again, talking about the boxers further down the bill, you know, this is one of those fights that, well, up until today certainly, was one of those likely to be talked about for a long, long time. And some of these boxers on the undercard could boast in years to come, I was on that card. You know, sometimes that's as big as it gets for some boxers further down the levels. You know, and they're going to lose that opportunity as well.
Yeah. Well, Barry Jones, of course, was on the Eubank Benn 2 rematch in the mid-90s, so he has fond memories of that as well. You, of course, know all about the context and had kind of first-hand experience of those fights. Just give us an idea of why the intrigue for you as someone that's followed this sport for the kind of decades that you have was so, I suppose, important and significant from your side of things.
I think we're all fascinated by the sons of fathers in sport, in entertainment, in business, wherever. You know, in football, we like to see sons of fathers coming through. In boxing, there have been many successful sons of fathers, but we haven't seen two at this level facing off, and certainly haven't seen two whose fathers had such a rivalry going back. And I've said that nostalgia is a massive part of sport. And look, I would say this as someone who's like twice your age, but it is a massive part of sport, how we do all the time look back and we compare. And even with the women winning the Euros earlier this summer, we talked about how that was ending 56 years of hurt, even though the other match was involving men in 1966. But we still started to talk about Wembley in 66, and nostalgia is a massive part of that. And for both, I think what we've been reminded of in the build-up to this is just actually how monumental those fights were back then. You look at, I mean, I've been looking up all sorts of facts and figures, as we all do in the build-up to this. The population of Britain in 1990, November 1990, was around 55-56 million. Now, at that time, Frank Bruno, Ben Eubank, Barry McGuigan, in that sort of 5, 6, 7 year span, were getting audiences of 18 million people. So you're talking about close to a third of the entire population watching a fight. It's just you can't fathom that in today's multimedia world. But that's what was happening.
And of course, for probably the biggest rivalry ever in the history of this country to have been left so, I suppose, unfinished in the eyes of many, given the way the second fight ended, but particularly for the dads to be in a position where they can actually live and potentially have a resolution to that rivalry vicariously through their sons. But this argument that we'll never get a situation like this again.
Yeah, as I was saying, there have been many sons of famous fathers who've been successful. You know, Julio Cesar Chavez. Not many of them have gone on to win world titles. Corey Spinks, the son of Leon Spinks, did as well. But as I say, we haven't had two of them come up in tandem. And what's interesting about this one is that when Connor Benn turned pro, I was there at the initial press conference, and there wasn't any talk then of him facing Eubank one day down the line, because it was just felt that he was too small. So,
I'm getting some information in my ear at the moment. It's a little bit muddled. We're hearing Connor Benn maybe in the building here. I can see Ellie Hearn to my left-hand side. I have to be honest, I have no idea what's going on. So everything that we're getting is coming to you live as we speak. Conor Benn is in the building with no word on the whereabouts of Chris Eubank Jr. So far. So whether there'll be an open workout, whether there'll be a statement, hopefully we'll have some information about that in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Mike, really appreciate your time as always. Thank you very much for coming to join us, and we will be right back with you after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. The fight!
speed, you love the power. Landed by Pacquiao. Look at that. What an incredible back.
Boyd knows every trick of the trade.
That's a great veteran skill by Bernard Hopkins.
She's impressing me here.
They respect each other's power, speed, and timing.
Terrific work from Amir Khan.
One big night, you can turn your life around him. Alvarez, certainly the future of boxing.
What a fight! How do you like it? How do you like it? The fight is over!
She's still pound for pound, the best in the world. Well, there is a stunning outcome.
An upset, a huge upset.
Welcome to DAZN.
This is something that comes along every now and then in generation, and it's special.
At home or on the move, we connect fans to the heart of sport on any device. Easily browse the DAZN schedule to see upcoming fights or catch up on recent events. Never miss a punch by setting reminders that alert you on your mobile device.
Can Ryan Garcia continue his rapid ascent?
Navigate Fight Night with key moments. Replay the rounds or action you want to see again and again. Watch over 30 years of archive fights, award-winning documentary film, and the exclusive DAZN boxing show, bringing you all the latest news and interviews with boxing's biggest names every weekday.
They'll all be thrown in the deep end in 2021.
The best innovations, the biggest stars, the greatest fights. Only on DAZN.
Fight fans, welcome to the DAZN Boxing Show.
Bringing you all the exclusive news, interviews, and outspoken views from the world of boxing.
I'm back in beast mode.
The fight starts now!
Catch the latest boxing news every single weekday.
I'm gonna be honest, man. That kid's pissing me off.
This is what boxing's all about. From the best fighters to the biggest promoters.
Give me some pros.
The boxing world is going to be buzzing. No one takes you closer to the fight game than the DAZN Boxing Show.
Stream live sport on DAZN. Just search DAZN in your app store and download DAZN to your smart TV, mobile device, computer or games console. Click on the subscription plan, sign up and create your account. Start streaming live sport, exclusive weekly content, archive events and award-winning documentary films. Only on DAZN. Chris Eubank Jr. takes on Connor Benn live on DAZN pay-per-view. To watch this event, sign up for DAZN first to access live boxing. Choose a monthly plan, then add the pay-per-view event. If you're already a DAZN subscriber, sign in, select the event, and follow the steps to buy. Don't miss Chris Eubank Jr. takes on Connor Benn. October 8th, live on DAZN pay-per-view.
Okay, welcome back everybody to the Outernet building near Tottenham Court Road. We've had all of our undercard fighters go through their open workouts. We hear Connor Benn is in the building. We still haven't had word on the whereabouts of Chris Eubank Jr. yet, but we have word that Connor Benn is coming to join us in the studio. Darren, this is one of the most unusual broadcasts I think you and I have ever done, and probably when we look back will be one of the most unusual ones we ever do.
I think so. One of the longest, that's for sure.
Yeah. So as of yet, the current status quo is the British Boxing Board have controlled, put out a status that the fight on Saturday, the main event, is not going ahead. Eddie Hearn said if that is the case, then the bill will be off. There is one half of our main event, Connor Benn, making his way into the studio. Mate, always good to see you.
You too, mate.
I know it's been a very unusual day for you. I know your legal advice has been not to say anything to anybody, but you wanted to come and speak to us today. The floor is yours.
Well, listen, I wanted to say this personally. You know, obviously you guys have read what the Daily Mail published about me today, and I wanted you guys to hear it from me personally rather than, reading it in a statement from me and my team. I've not committed any violations. I've not been suspended. So as far as I'm concerned, the fight is still going ahead. I've spoken to Chris personally, and we both want the fight to go ahead. We've both taken medical and legal advice, and as I said, we want the fight to happen for the fans. You know, I've signed up to every voluntary anti-doping testing there is under the sun. Throughout my whole career, I'm tested. You know, all my UK tests have come back negative throughout my whole career. I've never had any issues before. Even in the lead up to this fight, my tests have come up negative. You know, so my team will find out as to why there's been an initial adverse finding in my test. But as I said, as far as I'm concerned, the fight is still going ahead. I'm a clean athlete, and we'll get to the bottom of this. I just want to thank everyone for their continued support, and I'll see you all on Saturday.
Just one more question on the conversation with Chris Eubank. Did you reach out to him this morning? How was that conversation?
He fully believes. You know, he believes in me. And, you know, it's not who I am, it's not what I'm about. You know, I'm a professional athlete, and, you know, he was understanding.
So as far as you're concerned, open workouts?
We both want the fight to go ahead. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the fight is going ahead.
OK, Connor, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Cheers. OK, so Connor Benn's first statement since the news broke this morning. We are surrounded by waves and waves of press. We're now going to follow him over to the ring. He's going to go through his pad workout with Tony Sims. We're waiting on the whereabouts of Chris Eubank Jr. there. Connor, I don't know if you caught that, said that he spoke to Chris on the phone this morning. He said Eubank has faith in him, believes that he is a clean athlete. He says he's never had any adverse findings in any of his tests before. He says he's a clean athlete. He wanted it to come from him rather than people reading a statement in the press. That is the crux of what he said. And as far as he and Eubank are both concerned, they have agreed that they want the fight to go ahead. So this will be decided between the lawyers in the next 2 or 3 days. The British Boxing Board of Control, of course, issuing a statement to say that they, as far as their position is, they won't sanction this fight. And, well, what a situation we're in, and what must be going through his head right now as he tries to focus on what was already the biggest night of his life on Saturday. Yeah, absolutely. I guess we've all got our fingers and toes crossed that the fight's still going to go ahead. It's obviously very hard not to think about what's happened and not talk about it, but I think we've got to this stage now, and I'm sure most would still like to see the fight. Well, it's been a fascinating build-up over the last 8 or 9 weeks since the news broke that these two will be stepping in the ring together. So much speculation, so many unknown variables. What weight would Eubank hit the scales at on Friday afternoon? What the rehydration clause would be? What the speculation around the penalty fines for coming in a pound over the weight? How that weight would affect Eubank Jr. Who would be in his corner? Would Roy Jones make a surprise appearance? Would his father appear in the corner? And this has added a completely different and unforeseen layer of speculation, of conversation, of dialogue, and of course of uncertainty over what was already a brilliant and fascinating fight. And well, if it does go ahead, the atmosphere on Saturday for this young man could be very, very different, because the public reaction on Twitter, as you would expect for people that have those feelings of early disappointment, of uncertainty, of suspicion, that could turn the majority of the crowd against him. When this was really a 50-50 in terms of the backing of both of these fighters, he could be met with a real wave of vitriol on his way to the ring. How is he going to mentally prepare himself for the reaction that he may be met with on his ring walk on Saturday? Well, look, if it does go ahead, it will be very interesting to hear the crowd's reaction, and it will, if it did go the way that you said and the crowd are against Connor, it will be tough. It will be tough. But being quite specific to the sport, and I think most fighters are the same, when that bell goes, that first bell goes, you kind of drown all of the atmosphere out, and you sort of get to business. You can kind of make a sense of the crowd ever so slightly, but you just kind of get down to work and you block all of that out. But it will be interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the fight for now, because I think without drifting way too far into the realms of speculation and conjecture, we've had no time really to digest any of this. We got the news just sort of moments before we came on air, at lunchtime, and we've been on air ever since, and things have come through in our ear whilst we're kind of trying to also put together our thoughts on the undercard and everybody else that's worked so hard to be here on Saturday night. So let's actually talk about this fight on the assumption that it goes ahead here. Looking at the development of both of these fighters in the last 2 or 3 years, I think there was no chance of this kind of fight happening in 2019, 2020 with the way Benn's improved as a fighter, some of his results, Eubank's developments under Roy Jones. It makes it fascinating with the weight, with all the variables. How do you expect Chris Eubank Jr to approach this fight? Do you think he may take the same approach we saw against Liam Williams, sit off a little bit, try and take the sting out of Connor Benn's early work?
Potentially, yeah. I do feel he's calmed down slightly as he's got older and more experience. Where he would usually trade and mix fire with fire, I think now he'd probably settle down a little bit and maybe kind of accept that he may lose 2 or 3 early rounds and then try and get his size and power into the contest. And I think that there's that shift in power, that reverse psychology, where all of a sudden you've been on the back foot and then you start creeping forward after about 4 or 5 rounds and really start to sort of get those mental demons creeping into your opponent's mind and thoughts. And I'm pretty sure he'd be trying to look at a late sort of stoppage. I think Connor's going to be very dangerous early on. I don't think there will be any back foot fighting from Conor. I think he'll try his absolute best to establish centering and work away from there and try and land a big right hand over the top of the jab of Eubank that he has had tendencies to carry that left hand low.
There's of course a lot of discussions being how will the weight affect Chris Eubank Jr. Not quite so much discussion on how the weight will affect Connor Benn. And good chat with Danny Wilson a couple of weeks ago ahead of Terry Harper's move to 154 and a brilliant performance against Hannah Rankin, moving up over 25 pounds in weight. What he said was, in those last 3 weeks when fighters are trying to cut down to their weigh-in weight, you do start to lose strength, power and endurance, and ultimately you're trying to cling on to as much of it as possible. What he found with Terry Harper is that she carried all of those gym numbers, all of that strength, all of that power right into the fight. He will be the strongest, the most powerful, and with the best engine that he's had so far in his career. So this isn't going to be the same Connor Benn that we've seen at 147, and that's perhaps the assumption that people are making here. He's going to be the much smaller man, but remember in the days where his dad Nigel defended his WBC belt at 168 against Nicky Piper, who was coming down to super middleweight. Piper was physically huge, broad shoulders, long arms, had the height, the reach, but it was Benn who was physically the bull, held the centre of the ring, bossed the fight. There is a chance here that he could physically be Eubank's equal, if not a little bit more.
Well, look, he's a natural puncher. He punches very hard, so with that extra weight behind him, he's only going to punch even harder. I feel that's one thing that Chris Eubank Jr is going to be surprised at, how hard he actually does punch with that extra power.
You've held pads for him, right?
Yeah, he's very heavy-handed, very, very heavy-handed, and he's very quick. I think he generates a lot of that power from a solid base, but the razor-sharp hands that he's got, speed generates power. I think that's something Chris will be surprised at. On the flip side, Chris Eubank getting down to 157. I was a middleweight, and getting down to 160 was a real push. It was a hard slog, it really was. And a lot of people say, oh, you only got to go to the toilet to get that extra 3 pounds off. Well, when you haven't been really eating that well and blah, 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 you're not really going to the toilet. To get that extra 3 pounds off for me would have really been detrimental to my performance, without a shadow of a doubt. And I can understand where he's coming from, saying I'm 60 cent, blah, 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 because you've got to remember as well, up until late, he's been campaigning at a super middleweight as well. So I think getting down to 160 was, a hell of a push. So to lose the extra 3 pounds and then the rehydration clause, you can't really be in there 100%.
No. And in your early 30s as well, when the body expands, it doesn't tend to then contract. And I was just looking back, I think the lightest Eubank's ever come in at was around 156, and that was around the region of 10 years ago, in the very early stages of his career. I saw some of those early fights, and he's still a very lean athlete. But as you said, going up to 168, I mean, his trainer knows better than anybody that amazing run up to heavyweight when Roy Jones became world heavyweight champion, then went back down to to fight was never quite the same. Even somebody with his athletic ability, his skill set, wasn't the same fighter. And of course, going up to 168 for a number of years, coming back, we know he made 160 in his last fight, looked pretty good doing so. But I guess the variable is we don't know how much the Demetrius Andre fight took out of Liam Williams. You know, he was putting the pressure on, but has his punch resistance gone? He was knocked down a couple of times with jabs, which I don't think would have maybe put him down in the early days. But there is Connor Benn just exiting the building after, I imagine, what would be one of the most surreal days of his life, and adding a totally unforeseen layer of complication to what was already a week full of thoughts and difficulties and obstacles to prepare for. So he has now exited the building. We hear that Chris Eubank Jr is on the way, and we'll go through his open workout as well, and that will conclude a surreal afternoon ahead of a fight that I guess as fans we hope happens. But of course there is an outpouring of calls on Twitter for the fight to be cancelled, and with the news, with the uncertainty, you can absolutely understand why. With fighter safety, with the history of the Eubank family, Chris Jr. with Nick Blackwell, Chris Sr. of course with Michael Watson, and even Nigel Benn with Gerald McClellan, these families know probably more than any intertwined families about the inherent dangers of this sport, and have seen the lives that can be changed. And with this added layer of complication, it really does change the narrative going into Saturday.
You're still trying to digest it. I mean,
you're sort of hearing live thoughts from me and Darren here, which is never good at the best of times. And by the way, thank you very much for all your comments, because I know you guys understand that we're trying to unpick this in real time as you are. So thank you to all of you that have stuck with us.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's numerous ways you look at this. You look at it as a boxing fan, and you've been, you know, like many, I love this sport, and I've really been brought in by the hype of this fight. You know, you got to remember, there's no title on the line here. You know, it's just too.
Don't think it needs it.
No, exactly. No title on the line. It's just, you know, how well they've done as professionals and what their dad's done back in the past has made this fight so big. So as a fan of the sport, I'm thinking, you know, I'd love to see them fight. But then you look at it like that practically, and what it you know, look, you don't just run faster and jump higher. You can punch harder, and obviously that can lead to terrible things happening. Like, it's we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's gonna be a hectic couple of days, I think, for the lawyers and the board, etc. And let's see what happens. And look, we'll have to respect the decision that's made.
Yeah. Okay. Just had a note in my head. Chris Eubank Jr. is now 20 minutes away, so you can stick with us. We can talk through the card again, or you can head off. But we're hearing Chris Eubank is still 20 minutes away, so he won't be working out for at least half an hour now. So 10 fights on the bill. As far as the fight going ahead, on the assumption that it does go ahead, things will be starting at 3:45 on Before the Bell, our pre-broadcast segment. Myself, Darren Barker, Fabio Wardley, the English heavyweight champion boxing for the British, will be talking through. That's nice. I don't know when it was that we last called a fight together. Been with Barry Jones, and it's been lovely to have Barry on the team, who's of course stepped in since Andy Lee was on maternity leave, and then in camp with Joseph Parker. Andy will be back with us on Saturday with Laura and the rest of the squad. So Darren and myself will be calling the early fights. George Liddard, who we saw go through his paces a little bit earlier on, one of Tony Sims' managed fighters. I think Kev Mitchell will be in his corner on Saturday. Is that right, George Liddard?
I'm pretty sure he will be, yeah. He's been doing a lot of work with some of the younger fighters, Kev, developing himself as a coach. He's got so much to offer, Kev, he really does. His boxing brain is second to none. It really is. I mean, I remember him from the amateurs, Kev, and he's got a lot to offer these young fighters, so I'm pretty sure he'll be in the corner, yes. Absolutely
crackers, Kev Mitchell, but a good egg. So he'll be in the corner of George Liddard against Savoyji Gurgic. That's around about 10 to 4 on Saturday afternoon. Big Matty Harris in action as well, 3-0 heavyweight. Been in camp with Dillian White ahead of the Tyson Fury fight, in against Yuri Sunaj in his fourth contest. Chloe Watson as well, one of Ricky Hatton's new fighters, looking to go 4-0 against Nancy Franco. Shannon Courtenay returns as well for the first time in just over a year since that knee injury and that devastating loss to Jamie Mitchell. We didn't get a lot of time to talk about Shannon Courtenay. People have seen her at the moment on the SAS show, which is broadcast. They filmed that about a year ago. She had a difficult year with a lot of public scrutiny for some of the things that she said and have happened outside of the ring, but she seems to have had moments of introspection, understood of some of the things that maybe she didn't say right or did wrong, and she's come back a renewed fighter and wants to show that she's a different person as well, and needs a decent performance against Gemma Ruegg to prove to herself, to prove to everybody else that she can get back in the mix at 118 or 122.
Look, there'll be some ring rust, but what I did see, and I said it earlier, she looks happy. She looks pleased to be back. I think there'll be some pressure. Like you say, I think she needs to look good. Like I say, we've got to be a bit patient with her. It's been a little while, but it's good to see her back. You know, she's got, I think, split opinion with some fans, if I'm brutally honest. I think, you know, some...
She knows that.
Some really love her, and some don't really seem to take to Shannon Courtenay. So, you know, when you throw that into the hat and you got the right opponent like she did against Ebony Bridges, where there was a bit of to and a throw in, a bit of needle between each other, it makes for... When it's genuine, when there's genuine sort of bad blood, I think there is a place for it in boxing. I don't like all this manufactured rubbish just for the sake of it. So, yeah, look, no doubt with Shannon, we're going to see her in some entertaining fights, and it's good to see her back.
Her stablemate Harlem Eubank will also be featuring on Before the Bell after a really, really interesting last contest, which he was hit after the call of break by the referee, dropped and ostensibly stopped, wouldn't have made a 10 count, and took the 5 minutes to recover, box on before it was a second infringement of the same nature called an end to the contest. I'm going to have a chat with him a little bit later on and find out what that was like as an experience. Certainly I've never seen anything like it. He's in against David Campillo in our last contest on Before the Bell, round about 20 past 6, half past 6, but of course it will depend on how long or short the other fights go. That will conclude our Before the Bell segment. So George Lillard, Matty Harris, Chloe Watson, Shannon Courtenay and Harlem Eubank, and we'll go live at 7 o'clock on DAZN pay-per-view with Linden Harlem. And, well, Callum Sowland, what a morning. Always good to see you, mate. And I wish it was under different circumstances.
Yeah.
What a morning you've had.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one. But in boxing, be prepared for everything. It didn't break this morning to us. The British board stuff did. And, you know, the first thing that we did was not speak to lawyers, not speak to boards, not speak to anything else. We went straight for medical advice on what actually this was. And we're here. I think that's the statement we can make.
Can I ask what that medical advice was?
Look, at the end, I'm quoting a medical advice. Quoting medical advice. I'm certainly not in the position to give my own. Was that the traces were found of a female fertility drug, and this drug can raise testosterone levels. In this case, at the time of the test, the levels that were shown to us and which we showed to the medical people, they were non-performance enhancing, so non-PED. And you know, I won't want to go more into that, other than we then looked at the other test results, so obviously they're negative. It comes down to Chris at that point, and I said to him, look, we in or we out? And we're in.
What was his first reaction when you called him?
You know, Chris is not a man of too many words. He had spoken to Connor. Connor had called him. I am not party to that conversation, so I can't comment on that. But Chris was very straight that he would like the fight to go ahead.
Do you think this fight can still go ahead?
Absolutely,
personally?
yeah. I mean, we've got two boxers who are not suspended. I know that our lawyers are working on finding a solution with the British Boxing Board, but at the end of the day, they're neither under suspension, neither of them. So Chris obviously totally simple. Connor hasn't failed in the UK. It goes by the UCAD. UCAD controls, those have all come back negative, so the British board can't suspend him on that basis. And if you look at the decision, that's why we're trying to talk to the board via the lawyers, is what is the decision actually getting at? It's saying in the interest of boxing, but it doesn't reference on what basis that is. So it's a very short message. In fact, the message you saw put out by them was not more than we got. So if you're looking at our side, at the Team Eubank side, we've just got, it's off for the interest of boxing, okay. Right. Now, I could say a lot of things right now. I'm not allowed to. But there's precedence. There's, in this case, a full disclosure. And we've had the time to analyse it, and we've made a decision. And now my job as Chris Eubank's promoter and the promoter of the event, or co-promoter of the event, is to ensure we have an event. So we look at every measure possible right now, from high court injunctions to obviously, open for a discussion with the board. But if that doesn't happen and we can't find a solution, we look at other measures as well.
So they're the only obstacle. It's the British Boxing Board of Control right now.
Yeah, on the basis that they say that they won't sanction the fight at present. So, it opens a can of worms, doesn't it?
Does it help that both promotions, I mean, not only do you have very good communications with Eddie, you've always done very good business and got on well. Does it help that you're all on the same page in terms of perhaps lobbying with the board or putting your case to them in the next couple of days? Because you don't have very long to work, do you?
I'm not going to lie. I wish it wasn't the case, but we can't say that something's been withheld from us. It's been disclosed, and we've had the opportunity to seek, once again, the most important is the medical part of it. On the legal side of things, that's something else, of course. We got a legal team, we got King's Counsel involved, and we're looking forward to a great fight on Saturday night. I do think it will go ahead.
Yeah, so I know a lot of hard work has gone into this from your side. It would be a huge shame for everybody if it fell apart.
Most of all the fighters, and let's not forget the guys on the undercard and girls on the undercard as well.
Yeah, Cal, really appreciate you coming to speak to us on what I know is a very tricky day, and we wish you all the very best with
Thanks very much, gents.
Solution.
See you later. See you at the press conference.
Thanks, mate. Cheers. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Okay, so Cal Saulin's side of the story. I spoke to TalkSport a little bit earlier on, sort out medical advice. They feel that is good. The fighters have spoken. The promotions are on the same page. The British board, of course, has maintained their position so far that the fight will not go ahead on Saturday, and so it will be whether they can find a solution to that obstacle between now and, well, I guess they have to decide on their own cut-off point, whether it's at some point on Friday night. If they can't get this over the line, then it will be off, and we will wait with bated breath. And I suppose in a really strange way, this is going to draw even more attention to what was already one of the biggest sporting events in boxing this year.
At what point do you we've got the press conference tomorrow.
Yeah.
Does that go ahead? The weigh-in. I mean, soon it's got to be sorted within the next, few hours really. I mean, tomorrow it needs. You'd like to think. I mean, the weigh-in's on Friday.
Yeah.
You think tomorrow we should have an answer one way or another.
Goodness me. So currently at 12 minutes past 4, really appreciate all of you that have stuck with what is some serious filler from you and I, and that's not great at the best of times, but of course we've had very good reason for doing it so far today, and it's been a tricky show, so thanks for sticking with us. And we're hearing Chris Eubank Jr. is around 8 minutes away now from his open workout. Whether we'll hear from him or not in the studio is another matter altogether. His brother Harlem on the undercards on Before the Bells have been helping him prepare, and I guess we're going to find out how this preparations have gone if this fight goes ahead on Saturday night. A word on Chris Eubank Jr. Since linking up with Roy Jones, actually kind of watching back at his last couple of fights, has looked a different fighter. Jones has maintained the core facets of what made Eubank the fighter that he was, but just added a little bit of spice. His timing seems better, he knows when to punch more, and he's been more patient as well.
Well, I think he's... I'm not being too disrespectful here, but I feel he's taught Chris how to box. And the most important shot in boxing, without a shadow of a doubt, is the jab. And that was something that Chris just neglected. He never really threw. We'd see Chris, he'd sort of lunge him with a right-hand hook. Don't get me wrong, he was very effective with what he'd done. It was unorthodox to the way that you're taught how to box, but nonetheless, he was very physically strong, and he made what he had work for him. But what we've seen with Roy Jones is, like you say, a bit more patience, a bit more thought in what you're doing, and everything now, there's a jab. I'm starting to see him pick out a jab. Not just to the head, there's variation with that shot, and like I say, that in itself is a trap. That unlocks your opponent. That helps you find the range for the right hand, the left hook. Everything flows from the jab, and yeah, just a bit more understanding about the actual basics of boxing, which I think Jones has implemented into Chris Eubank Jr.'s style.
Did you get the impression from Connor Benn that he's going to come out the traps all guns blazing and try and pile pressure on Eubank? Because the one hallmark of Eubank's career is in between those flashy bursts, combinations, the big hooks, is that he does like to take walks and have breaks and posture and stay very much like his dad used to do, to give himself maybe time for the engine to replenish and for him to go again. How important is it for Ben to stay in him and not allow him the breaks that he traditionally has taken him?
Well, do you know what? When I watched the first 2 fights back yesterday, I kind of forgot how good of a counter-puncher Chris Eubank was. He was very, very good. He'd make you miss and fire back with the uppercut or the right hand over the top. Like, he generally likes a counter-punch. And when he had you hurt, he was a tremendous finisher. And I feel, certainly to stay with Chris Eubank Jr., if he is going to sit back a little bit on the back foot, he can't just let Connor steamroll him and really get to work. He's going to have to fight like his dad did, the supreme counterpunch. He's going to have to try and make Connor fall short with the shots, come over with the right hand. He can't just allow Connor to just completely outwork him for those first four rounds. Don't get me wrong, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but you don't want to give someone like Connor that momentum, 4 rounds under your belt, and then start to get to work. I still feel he's got to be cute, he's got to be selective with his shots. You can't just sit on the ropes and not do anything.
Well, especially if you don't know how your engine is going to be affected by shaving another couple of pounds off and having a rehydration clause in place. The plan could be to go to work from the midpoint, but he might not have the energy to do so.
Yeah, you know, people always say, it's only the output that physically drains you down the stretch. Well, it's not. There's 3 components, really. There's the defensive side of things. When you're taking shots, you're thinking about what's coming your way. What it does to you physically when you're hitting arms and chests and everything, it hurts. Then you've got the psychological side of things where you're thinking about your opponent, and then you've got the output. So it's not just a case, if he's just sitting on the rope for 4 rounds, let me tell you, that's physically draining on a fighter. So, you know, I think he's got to be smart with his ring positioning, Chris. You know, he's got to take that little step back, trying to find the counters over the top, because he won't have to go looking for Connor, I don't think Connor will surprise us in this contest. No. I feel he's going to get straight on the chest and really try and just outwork Eubank. I think there's going to be a lot of fault in what he does. He's not going to be reckless with his work, Connor Benn, but I think he will try and get on the chest of Chris Eubank, because in some ways, even though you're the smaller man, as we've spoke about it a lot, you can sometimes nullify the threat of your opponent's work by getting very close. And I think that's what we'll see from Connor. When I'm talking about it now, it's getting me really excited about the fight.
And you feel very conflicted because you've got this kind of lingering feeling of uncertainty and a bit of disappointment, which has kind of replaced the immense excitement that we felt about 4 hours ago when we woke up.
Exactly, you know, but again, going back to the tactical side of things, there's so many imponderables that can make this such a brilliant fight that, I do hope it happens, but this is the maddest show we've ever done.
Yeah, it is the maddest show we've ever done. I have had a couple of conflicting reports on why that Eubank is either very nearly here or here, and that he is, when he does arrive, coming to speak to us and give his account of proceedings in the studio. So stay with us imminently. The next couple of minutes or so, hopefully, we're going to be speaking to Chris Eubank Jr. and then we're going to watch him work out, and that's all we've got for you. Connor Benn had an opponent in Adrian Granados who he thought was going to come and engage with him. It was a rescheduled fight from Fight Camp last year, and then Granados actually did the complete opposite. He cycled around the outside of the ring. It was almost as if he felt the power early and thought, do you know what, I'm just going to get to points and pick up my paycheck. If Eubank decides to be a little bit negative, use the perimeter of the ring, as he did against Liam Williams in the last fight, try and take the sting out of Connor Benn's work, how important is it for Benn not to be loading up on that right hand, to headhunt too much and to hit what he can early and stay patient?
Well, I don't feel we'll see that much movement from Eubank, but I know what you're saying. I think he'll move, but I don't think it will be as fast and as frequent as Granados did. But I think it's about... and I'm sure he has, it's about what has Connor learnt from that fight. I think he learnt, certainly, you're not going to have things your own way sometimes. That doesn't mean fighters taking your shots. It's fighters that just won't engage, and you've got to know And I think he learned from that. You got to cut the ring off. That was one of the issues that I see. He was loading up to the head a lot, and just there was no real thought in his work. But we've seen since that he has improved from that. He's cut to the ring off now, tries to pin opponents on the ropes and in the corner, and sets things up a little bit more. I mean, that for me was a frustrating night for sure, but I think he's learned a lot from that, Connor.
Yeah, could be in a good position to take advantage of that on Saturday night. So we're now hearing Eubank is 6 minutes away. So what we're going to do, we're going to head to a short promo by DAZN, and we'll be right back.
The greatest rivalry in British boxing, Eubank Benn.
Everybody took sides.
Every time they got in a room, you were on edge.
It can kick off at the drop of a dime with me and him.
When they come to centre of the ring, it was just edge of your seat stuff.
Eubank, the master of technique. Benn was the master of violence. Imagine if the Sons would fight.
It's just a complete war.
There is nothing bigger. When you talk about storylines, great fights, there is nothing bigger than Eubank Benn.
I wanted to be a part of something that's never been done before.
He is exactly like his dad, and I'm exactly like mine.
This is personal. We have to make this fight.
What's on the line and me having to uphold my family name, it's a huge amount of pressure.
What's in my DNA?
What's in my veins? What's in here? I had a lot of aggression towards my dad. I never saw eye to eye. It damaged me growing up. Just had it out. I hit him hard. Even the worst parts of my dad I have.
I had a painting of my brother, a man that I love, have him there as a reminder of why I'm doing this. Family, legacy, the Eubank name.
The last fight, I believe my dad should have won.
The things that his father put my father through, I can't forgive and I can't forget.
Let's just get in the ring. The ferocity is so reminiscent of his father.
I'm an emotional fighter. I fight with my heart on my sleeve, and it's just the way I am.
This is going to be a fight for the ages.
It's impossible for you to win. I know how to hurt people.
I can't lose. I refuse to lose.
I gotta win this. I just can't lose this fight.
So a build-up over 3 decades in the making. And of course, the added component we haven't had really a chance to talk about today, which I think we were expecting to, is the role that both of their dads have played in this unbelievable saga. The 90s, of course, for me, was when I became a boxing fan. I remember Bruno McCall, of course, the second fight with Ease as a young, I guess, 5 or 6 year old boy. Magic nights that captured the nation. And Mike Costello, who joined us earlier, obviously talked about that they had 18 million plus audiences watching the likes of Bruno and McGuigan and Benn and Eubank, when the population was about 55 million, a third of the country stopping to watch these events. What do you remember of those first fights? I know you remember the second fight particularly. What do you remember about the build-up, the rivalry, and the sense that this is not just one of the biggest boxing matches in the world, but one of the biggest events in the country?
Well, it all filtered through the family, first and foremost. You know, my dad was a boxer, my granddad was a big boxing fan, so was my uncle a boxer. So, you know, it was the buzz around the family that fight was happening, the rematch certainly. And like, we were big Nigel Benn fans. We just loved the way that he committed to the fight, and he just was all action and left everything in the ring. I remember being in my mum and dad's house, and just it was electric. It was electric in our front room. Do you know what I mean? That genuine bad blood and hatred. That, like I said earlier, when it's genuine like that, it really does add that extra bit of spice to the fight, and that one certainly did. It was. I mean, we just spoke then about mentality, about Conor not losing his head. He's got to stay composed and switched on.
Well, those low blows in that second fight, what cost him points on the scorecard, Nigel Benn, and I think most people felt he'd done enough at at the completion of the 12 rounds.
He did.
Yeah, and of course that technically was what cost him the fight. How important is it for Connor Benn if his fight goes ahead on Saturday? Because we know he's an emotional fighter. He admits, he said, I've got a plan, but I'm an emotional fighter. He's got to keep those moments in check, isn't he?
Yeah, he has to. He has to. But the most important thing is not to panic or not to worry if Eubank starts creeping forward a little bit. It's to remain switched on and you know, don't worry that, you know, Eubank's going to have plenty of spells in this fight. It's about, he's got to be on it. He can't let, you know, he can't at any point start feeling sorry for himself. But he's got to stay in check. He's got to stay emotionally involved in the fight. You've got to be present, but you can't lose your head. I'm
going to bring Harlem Eubank in at this point to come and have his say on what has been one of, I mean, the most bonkers days that we've ever had on the broadcast. Have you spoken to Chris this morning? And how is he?
I haven't, but Chris, he's always cool, calm and collective. Yeah, he's not fazed by much, so this isn't going to bother him at all. Chris he really believes there's no way Connor Benn, no matter what, is going to have enough to deal with him in there. And that's his mindset.
It's got to be crazy for you as well, because obviously you're on the bill and you want to fight. So at one point it's your family going through all of this, but then also you want to be busy. You want to stay active. So you obviously want the show to go ahead and hopefully get another W. Yeah,
that's it. It's a weird scenario, but I'm confident that it will go ahead, and I'm preparing accordingly, going through the motions as normal, and yeah, let's hope it goes ahead and the main event happens, and I get to show a showcase of what I can do on there as well.
Have you been helping Chris with his preparations for this contest?
Yeah, I've been sparring Chris down in Brighton for this one, helping him, you know, with that sharp speed and that style that Connor's going to bring to him. And he's looking good, he's looking dangerous, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I bet you are. I want to talk a little bit about your last contest in the summer, because I switched over about round 2 or 3. All was going well. Dangerous Mexican opponent, heavy hands. You were in control, and things got very, very out of hand very quickly, and led to a situation and a scenario I've never seen in my time watching boxing. Talk me through, just for people who haven't seen, you obviously were hit twice after, I think it was called a break, wasn't it? Yeah. And the second, the 2 shots you had, you took completely flush because you had let your guard down because the referee had said stop boxing, and you got dropped hard, and in any other circumstance the fight would have been waved off, but the referee decided to give you the opportunity, giving you a head on the cards, to take the 5 minutes recovery, and you've essentially got to let your head clear and then try and navigate what was at the point another 4 or 5 rounds. Talk me through those 5 minutes from what you remember and what your experience was.
I was in control of the fight. Very dangerous opponent, and I was controlling him, and he was getting frustrated. He struck me after the break in the 3rd round. Yeah. Referee didn't see it. Carried on. Round, I think it was round 6.
5 or 6, yeah.
I think it was round 6. Referee said break again. Stepped back. Struck me with 2 blows after that break. Yeah, the referee decided to let it go on. I was happy. I was just taking my time to go back at this guy, because I knew them cheap shots after was a plot to try and change the tide of the fight, and maybe, you know, try and blow me out with a 5-punch combo when the ref says, you know, fight again. So I took my time, made sure I was good, and then I went back at him with fire, and continued to win the rounds and continued to hurt him. And round 9, he decided to go outside the rule set once again. And at that point, the ref took control of the fight and decided to stop it early.
Yeah. What was those 5 minutes like? Because you were kind of crouched down on your haunches in the corner. I could see you were just gathering yourself mentally, taking the time you needed, because you can do all the training in the world, all the sparring, be as well conditioned, but nothing prepares you for a situation like that. You have to manage it in real time.
You don't get experiences like that. They don't really come unless you experience it, the real thing, you know, when the pressure's there, and it can go either way, and you decide, you know, do I take a way out, or do I continue and you know, fight my way out? And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to end the fight quickly and get the decision. I wanted to win the fight as a true fighter, and continue to go at my guy.
And you did.
What's the plan Saturday? And secondly, all going well and not looking too past Saturday, how far do you think then to fighting for some decent titles?
I think I'm knocking on the door. I think it's just a matter of which route my team want to take, whether it's British, European.
Do you have a preference?
I don't mind. My dream is to become world champion one day, and every title is a step closer to that. So whichever route that is, I don't mind.
I think I'm right in saying Enoch Paulson's got the EBU title. I think him and Frank Petitjohn had a contest, and I think they're having to run it back because there was some very strange refereeing in that fight. But I have to say, probably two of the weakest European champions seen at that division for a little while. Of course, Dalton Smith looking very, very good as a British title holder.
If you look at the division, I think the division's wide open.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to make statements and continue to kick down the doors like I have been, and put my name in the mix to fight the top guys.
Yeah, well, you've done things under the radar, and you're starting to put your head above the noise now. People are starting to talk about you, so congratulations so far. We'll wish you all the very best for Saturday. Thanks for talking to us. Harlem Eubank will be second. Thanks very much. You'll be last, to beg pardon, on our Before the Bell segment. We're now hearing Chris Eubank Jr. is 10 minutes away, so I don't know whether he's just walking backwards around London, but
it's like something out of lock stock. You said 10 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, Turkish.
It'll be 6 p.m. by this point. EastEnders will be on before we speak to Chris Eubank Jr. So, with that said, we are still waiting imminently for the arrival of Chris Eubank Jr. Apologies to those of you, and thank you for sticking with us. Harlem Eubank, a little bit like Felix Cash in many ways, hasn't had the exposure of his brother and of the family name. Just had to go about his work quietly, calmly, assuredly, and very much like Felix Cash, just built that record up undefeated under the guidance of Adam Boover and the team at their gym, and is now sort of almost under the radar in a really, really strong position. For the likes of Dalton Smith, kind of staking his claim as you know, the best of the guys who aren't knocking on the door of world titles, the Jack Catteralls, and of course Josh Taylor, who may well move up to 147. Outside of those, Robbie Davis Jr., Dalton Smith, of course, Casey Benjamin challenging him for the British title. You look at the EBU scene, Harlem Eubank well ranked. There's no reason why he couldn't go and win a European title, and there's a potential clash with Dalton Smith to unify those down the line for the pair.
There's some big fights for Harlem, and like I said it earlier, you know, I think he has gone under the radar a little bit, considering who, you know, what name he has. But look, do you know what? I think he can do really, really well, Harlem. There's a lot to like about him. He's a rhythm fighter, and he gets into that rhythm quite early. He's got a nice jab, he's relaxed, razor-sharp reaction, and I love the way he slips in and throws the left to the body. He's a good fighter. I think he touched on it there. It was an experience. You can't buy them experiences. They'll teach you an awful lot.
As awful as they are at the time.
As awful as they are, you know. Some fighters out there will bend the rules, but he come through it, and you move on to the next one. And look, all going well on Saturday, which I'm sure it will. It would be interesting to see what is next for Harlem Eubank.
Yeah, certainly his team have positioned him well, and he's got to do the business on Saturday night. That will be on the pre-broadcast segment, so free and available to everybody watching this as part of 5 fights on Before the Bell, starting at 3:45. George Liddell, one of Tony Sims' new pro debutants, trained by Kevin Mitchell. Big Matty Harris looking to go 4-0 heavyweight. Chloe Watson, one of Ricky Hatton's fighters. Shannon Courtenay returns for the first time in a year, and Harlem Eubank against David Campillo will finish things off at around 6:50, at which point we'll then go live on DAZN pay-per-view at 7 o'clock around the world. Linden Arthur kicking things off after a kind of return fight after that defeat to Anthony Yard against Walter Sakira. He's up against Cesar Reynoso. Ellie Scottney against the European champion Mary Romero. Really, really interesting scrap bout. The winner deservedly will move on to box for a world title. Felix Cash returns again against unbeaten Connor Coyle, Derry fighter based out in the United States. And Galal Yafai, the Olympic gold medalist, one of the standout stars from the Tokyo Games and a former Commonwealth medalist too, will be in action in our chief support. His third contest, looking to go 3-0 against Gohan Garcia from Mexico, and that will set the table very nicely for our main event. Galal Yafai, we just heard from him a little bit earlier, part of the Yafai fighting family, super calm, composed. It's strange to see somebody who's being fast-tracked but also gives the air of a man that isn't in any kind of rush with his career. He seems to have everything and be taking everything in his stride under what is very high pressure circumstances for pretty much any other fighter in his position.
I feel that probably comes from Rob McCracken a little bit as well. Knowing the Yafais and Galal, certainly he would get in there with anybody. Knowing Rob, and Rob was always sort of around early on in my career for sure, and I remember him. You know, he's one of those. He never wants to match his opponents hard, not until they're completely ready. There was many a times that Frotch always looked like he was going to step up a bit quicker than he did, and Rob's like, whoa.
And Carl always wanted to take those fights, didn't he?
Yeah, Cole did, and Rob was like, no, you know, by the time, to the point where you're almost like, come on, what's going on?
Well, you were up for fighting Golovkin, weren't you? And Tony said, sorry, mate, we're not having this. And so that was a good decision in hindsight.
I shook his hand after I was tired. Thanks, Tone. Thanks for that. But I think, knowing the fighter will get him with anyone. Sometimes you need someone like Rob who just said, whoa, hold on a minute, you've got plenty of time here, you know. This is a career, and careers aren't over in 2 years, not when you've got the ability and the know-how that Galal has. So it's about learning your trade, though he's already gathered so much information and experience through the amateurs. It's a different game now. You've got to remember it's a business as well, so you want to be fighting and earning money, and when the time's right, and Rob will know when the time's right, and a lot of us might get a little bit frustrated thinking, come on, and I'm sure Eddie will play his part in trying to get him, fast-track him a little bit.
Yeah, there'll be some push and pull there.
There will be, certainly.
But I guess if you are considerably head and shoulders above the rest, as he has been in the amateurs, and like Lomachenko was, and Usyk and everybody else, and they decide to fast-track him, a defeat here or there in his first 12 or 13, as they were with Lomachenko, it isn't the worst thing in the world. He will ultimately be looking at securing his legacy, winning world titles, fighting the very, very best. And we talked about, Julio Cesar Martinez and Artem Dalakian and Jinson Nakatani, and of course Sonny Edwards, who he sparred multiple rounds with, and said, look, we know that we're kind of equals in the ring. We know it'll be a brilliantly competitive fight. Those are fights that he will know from sparring these guys where his level is now, but he cannot fast-track that ring experience. No. And ultimately, on Saturday night, in a strange way, the more rounds he gets, probably the better for him.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, sometimes when when you've been competing at that level that Galal has, it can be very harmful to you as a fighter and to your career to drop down and stay at that level for too long. Anything can happen. There's injuries, there's the chance of you dropping down the levels and just underperforming. I think it's important for him, someone who's so competitive and has been used to, how many fights would he had as an amateur? Hundreds. Ridiculous amount of fights. Campaigning at the highest level. You want that competition. And when you're just walking over people that you're just not, you're just far too good to be in the ring with. Yeah. You want competition, and that will bring him on as a fighter. And look, it's sport at the end of the day. You can win, you can draw, you can lose. When you're as good as him, you can just, dust it off. If something did happen where you pushed it a little bit too fast, so what?
Absolutely. Well, let's hear from Galal Yafai, who's caught up with him a couple of weeks ago, the Olympic gold medalist. My ear, there was supposed to be a promo there, but I'm hearing Chris Eubank Jr has arrived, and that does take precedence, of course, over everything else. So we will try and catch a word with Chris when he comes round to us. And, well, just hearing little snippets there, and of course it's interesting with Calisalan, with Eddie, with Connor. They have to be kind of careful what they say at this point, just from a legal standpoint. But interesting to hear that the fighters talked, and I think from Connor Benn's standpoint, regardless of what has happened, and only a very, very small number of people will know that, he's done the right thing by reaching out directly to Chris this morning, hasn't he?
Yeah, without a doubt. I'd have loved to have listened to the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It would have been...
That could have been on pay-per-view.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, we'll try and get a word from Chris Eubank when he comes in as to his side of what that conversation is. We heard from Harlem Eubank as well. He said unrattleable, very little phases him. So I guess he's one of a small number of people that could probably take this kind of news in its stride ahead of what he's already got 101 things to think about ahead of Saturday. And of course, the word to this point, for those of you just joining us, we've spoken to Eddie Hearn. There's been a joint statement from Wasserman and Matchroom Boxing saying that as far as the two teams are concerned, they're both happy that this fight can go ahead. The British Board of Boxing Control has taken the opposite stance and said they won't sanction it, so they will no doubt be furiously going back and forth behind the scenes to come to a solution. Both of the fighters want to go ahead. We heard from Connor Benn earlier saying that he wanted to say directly against legal advice that he is a clean athlete, he's never knowingly taken any prohibited substances, that he reached out to Chris Eubank Jr this morning to have a conversation with him. Eubank believed him, said he had faith that he was telling the truth, and they had some good positive dialogue. And that man there, who has just entered the building, the eagle has landed, ladies and gentlemen, was happy with what Ben said to him and wants the fight to go ahead. And well, whatever you think about the situation, the amount of preparation and work that will have gone into his side of things and Ben's side of things, when fighters get this close to fights, they don't want anything to get in the way of the action on Saturday, especially when it's a fight of this significance, this magnitude, with everything that's gone before in the build-up.
100%, and if, you know, there's reports that he's done the weight really well, he's dropped the weight, the last thing you'd want to have to do is pull out of a fight, or, you know, for the fight to be cancelled after all of that work you've done. So he'll be desperate for this fight to go ahead on Saturday night.
That's the wrong way, mate. That's the wrong way. We need to hear from you, Mr. Eubank. Well, there we go. He's gone away. Who knows when he'll be back? He might just go for a wander up to Holborn and Chancery Lane. He's coming back. That's good news.
I might be putting some money in the meter. You don't want to be getting parking tickets up here.
No, certainly not. Not even with the payday he's getting on Saturday night. You don't want a parking ticket in London. So appreciate all of you who followed this live as it's unfolded with us. It has been a bizarre, 3 and a bit hour broadcast at this point, but we've stuck with it and we are nearly there. And I think the most important thing now is that we hear from Chris Eubank Jr. He will, we hear, be going through a workout with his pad man Anthony. I think the most important thing is we hear from him, get his side of the story, and of course that will at least give us, I suppose, not just a trifecta, but a quadrant of information from Eddie Hearn, from Kalle Sauerland, and from both of the fighters. And I suppose there is a positive that these are two promoters that have very good relationship, very good dialogue, Eddie and Kalle. They've worked together for years. They are kind of friends outside of the ring, and so coming to a solution in a very, very tricky situation like this, if you weren't on good terms, let's be honest, if this was Matchroom in Queensbury or, say, Top Rank in PBC, this is the kind of thing that could break down in a heartbeat, couldn't it?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, and I think, you know, you've got to be encouraged by that relationship, and that, you know, I don't want to get anyone too excited, but that's why my gut just somehow feels that this is still going to go ahead Saturday. Yeah, two very experienced promoters that have learned from you know, their family, and I think, you know, they'll do absolutely everything. They'll have all the correct teams in place to get this fight over the line.
Regardless of all the chaos and the news that's unfolded in the last 3 or 4 hours, if they can get it over the line, it will be one of the biggest events in sport this year, and this, of course, is what it's all about.
Live on DAZN Pay-Per-View, a legendary rivalry is reborn. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Connor Benn. Born rivals, it's time to settle the score. Eubank Jr. versus Benn, 8th of October, live on DAZN Pay-Per-View. Visit DAZN.com.
Ladies and gentlemen,
you live on Saturday night from the O2. If it goes ahead, Chris Eubank Jr. And Connor Benn will clash in our main event. Connor Benn, of course, an emotional week for him until this point. His mum, Caroline, his sister India came over from Australia. The first time he's seen them in 4 years, to kind of add to the emotion, the intensity that he'll be feeling heading into this contest. And well, for a rivalry that's so close to having a resolution, we really are no closer to knowing whether it's going to go ahead. But Chris Eubank Jr., as you've seen, he is in the building. We are going to be hearing from him imminently. We don't know how long away it's going to be. Really appreciate you sticking with us, because we have been on air now for about 2.5 hours, and really winging it by the seat of our pants. And we've done some winging in our time, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, look, he's back.
And well, credit to him, because if he'd wanted a way out of this contest or wanted any excuse to call off proceedings last minute today, he would have been absolutely within his rights to have done that, but he hasn't. He picked up the phone to Connor Benn this morning. They had some positive dialogue. He seems cool, calm, collected. And as far as he is concerned, he wants the fight to go ahead. Just spoke to Harlem Eubank not too long ago, he said, replicating the style of Connor Benn in the gym, putting the pressure on Chris Eubank, trying to mimic the things that could be ahead of him and in front of him on Saturday night. And, well, half of our main event does join us. Head round the front, Chris. Really appreciate you making the time to come and speak to us. I imagine quite a surreal day ahead of what was already one of the biggest weeks of, if not the biggest week of your professional life. And we hear that you had a phone call from Connor Benn this morning. What can you tell us about the conversation you had together?
There was no phone call.
Have you spoke to Connor?
No, we haven't spoken.
So that's incorrect information. Connor said he spoke to you on the phone this morning?
Yeah. No phone call. We haven't spoken since this has been announced. And it's a shame, you know. But my promoters, his promoters, the Boxing Board of Control, they're going to sort it out. I'm ready. I'm clean. I'm 60%. I've been tested my entire career for the last 10 years. I've been tested more than I've ever been tested for a fight during this training camp. I have an app on my phone where I have to designate where I'm going to be every single day, and I've been on that app for my entire career, and I will be on it for the rest of my career. And they can come and test me, blood, urine, unannounced, whenever they see fit. And I've never failed a test. I've even been tested on holiday. Obviously I don't condone illegal substances in the sport of boxing, especially in boxing, because it is, things can happen. Health is a real issue.
But if you don't condone that, what would be your reasoning for going ahead with this fight?
Well, I listen. I'm staying out of the politics. I don't know what's gone on. I've heard the news like you guys have heard the news, and all I can do is be a professional and make sure I'm ready to fight. I am ready, and as news unfolds, then we'll deal with it as it goes on.
The British Board of Boxing's position is that currently they are refusing to sanction the fight. You said that you believe they're going to sort it out. What gives you faith that they will come to a resolution and that this will go ahead?
I've prepared. I've done my job. It's now in the hands of the promoters, the governing bodies, to make this fight happen. All I can do is be ready.
There were already concerns about the rehydration clause, the weight cut, of course. I know you've made light of it with the 60%, but we all know the risks. And you and your family, and Connor's family, Nigel Benn and Gerald McClellan, your dad with Michael Watson, yourself and Nick Blackwell, you know the real dangers of this sport better than probably any fighting family. Between yourself and Connor, is there any concerns with this news about your safety on Saturday night? Will that affect your position with regards to the weight, the rehydration? Are you looking to push for any changes under the stipulations of which this fight will take place?
Of course there's concerns, but listen, I can't really say too much.
I know you can't, and I appreciate that.
I just can't, but again, I'm ready. I'm a clean fighter. I've prepared. I've cut the weight. I'm ready to go. This is all. It's all unfolding.
Yeah.
I'm in as much know as you guys are. All I've got to do is make sure I'm ready to go.
Sorry, Chris, what is your gut? Do you think the fight goes ahead?
I hope so. It should do. I'm ready. He's ready. Whatever the Boxing Board are saying, they're saying, and my promoters will do their best to make sure that we get the fight going and that the fans are not let down.
Okay, Chris, appreciate you talking to us, and we won't delay you any further. Go and get your workout done, and thanks very much for for speaking to us. Chris Eubank Jr, one half of Saturday's main event, has faith in the British Boxing Board of Control's ability to get things over the line, and says there was no phone call this morning, and hard to know really what conclusion to draw from that. You know Connor Benn, knows that he's an honest guy. It seems unusual that he would make something like that up, but Eubank says there was no call. So yet again we have a kind of he said, she said situation in boxing. We don't know who to believe. We've got multiple sources of information saying different things. He seems relaxed though, given everything that's unfolding around him, and that's an unshakable guy, because this is a difficult situation.
I mean, what can he do?
No.
What can he do? I mean, he's just got to keep his fingers and toes crossed that something can be done, because he'll be devastated. You know, as will Connor. You know, they'll be so eager to get in that ring and put it all on the line. But yeah, like you say, he looks composed, he looks calm and relaxed, and it must be such a surreal experience to go through. You know what is going through your mind? Do you put on the brakes a little bit? In some respects, you're lucky that it's happened this week, because training's done, all preparation is finished. All it is now is the final bit of weight making, but there's no more training to be done, because if this happened 2 weeks ago, I mean, though they've got a bit more time to sort of suss it out and try and get it over the line, you're still well within your training camp. But that's all done, and it's just a case now of getting the green light and getting these guys in the ring.
There it is, Padman Anthony putting on those, they call them kind of pre-cut wraps, just to save a little bit of time and going through these kind of workouts. And of course the conversation, had we not had the news this morning, would have been about how he looks. It doesn't look vastly different to normal. I mean, he looks lean, as you would expect him to look, making 157 pounds, but he looks pretty well.
Yeah, he does look well. I would be so intrigued to know what he's weighing now. There's a lot of, I don't know if he's one of these guys that do the water loading and drop a load of weight at the end.
Can't be much over 162, 163 at this point, with a couple of days to go, can he? If you're going to do 4 or 5 pounds, but it could be close to 160 at this point.
I probably would say probably top whack 162, 163 now. With so much on the line and so much money that one you could lose if this fight don't go ahead, I just can't see him risking taking a load off at the last minute, and I don't think that's detrimental really to longevity in the fight as well. I think you kind of want to manage the weight properly, and I think dropping it at the last minute is difficult. But again, that's my old school mentality, and it's probably not right.
No, but and of course we know that he wants Connor Benn to become emotional on the night, to fight on emotion, to use that momentum potentially against him, play the matador to what he knows will be the bull in the ring opposite him. And of course this situation he may see as difficult as it is, one that he can use to his advantage if the crowd get on Benn's back through the news this week. He can stay calm and I suppose have his mind clear. He may foresee this leading to more mistakes that he can employ on Saturday night. Yeah. Maybe that's his thinking.
I think that's what they would be.
And now, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, making his way to the ring, 32 wins, 2 defeats, 23 wins, coming by way of knockout. Fighting out of Brighton, England, here is the next gen, Chris Eubank Jr. Eubank Jr.
Well, if you just joined us and you'd been living under a rock since about 9 a.m. this morning, you wouldn't really know anything was awry here. Eubank looking relaxed, sharp. He's a little bit late, but I think we can forgive him with probably the number of phone calls and things he's had to deal with outside of this. But going through his pace, he's looking calm, fresh, relaxed, and as if all is going to plan and all is on schedule.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a very experienced fighter now. He's not this young prospect anymore. He's been around the block. He knows, and he's been in with some big fighters. So though this is something he would have never experienced before, he's called on his experience to sort of keep him calm, keep him centered, keep him present, and he does look extremely relaxed with all that's been going on. And I can tell you now, in those boots, he'll have his toes crossed because he'll be desperate for the fight to go ahead on Saturday.
What a reception he's likely to receive. Walking second, of course, in the main event. Benn will be walking first on Saturday night live on DAZN pay-per-view. Ring walks tentatively scheduled for around about 10:30, and of course we know how fluid those can be. We expect that local time. And of course we still don't know definitively who will end up turning up in his corner. He's hinted there may be a surprise or two. Could it be Roy Jones? Will his dad make an appearance? We just don't know at this stage. He's said he's been training himself in the camp. I know Ronnie Davis has been ever present at the gym down in Brighton where he trained his dad for so many years in the 90s. Will there be an addition to his camp? How will that affect his performance on Saturday night? How will the weight affect his performance? He was non-committal when we asked him just now about the weight stipulation. Is it going to change his approach? He would, I guess, given the side of this debate that he's on, he would be in a far more forgiven position from the public if he now just decided to come in at 160. No one would really say a thing to him, would they?
Yeah, I guess not. But I can't imagine he'd do that because he's been speaking about the 60%, etc. from day dot. So I can't imagine he would do that. But you're right. The kind of, I guess, the ball's in his court, really.
So Chris Eubank Jr. just having a move around the ring after a surreal afternoon here at the Outernet building near Tottenham Court Road. I remember seeing his early fights at Bluewater when he was boxing under Mick Hennessy, seeing a raw novice struggling with a slippery fighter in Tyan Booth at middleweight, getting the job done inside the 8-round distance. And well, he steadily improved since those days. Of course, chased the big money fights up at £168 in the Super Series, and fair play to him, because it's hard enough to make a living in boxing. When you're offered big money, you should take it. But it wasn't his natural weight division, and it's come up short against a very good fighter in George Groves. It was just about at the kind of peak of his powers. We saw that kind of the last best of George Groves. There was the Billy Joe Saunders fight, of course, at 160 on the Fury Chisora card at the XL. I was there that night. It was a feverish atmosphere, I think the likes of which he probably hasn't experienced until Saturday night again. And historically, he's struggled with fighters with excellent distance and timing, but also in those situations, he has shown the ability to throw the game plan out the window, turn fights ugly, have a plan B, take the fight to the streets, and has dragged fighters into some pretty deep waters. He took Billy Joe Saunders right to the wire in a split decision. I remember press row that night, nobody really knew who had won the fight come the 12th round. Just a sense maybe Saunders had pinched it by one, and given that he clean swept the first 6, and of course against Groves, he was never really hurt in that fight. He was outboxed for periods of it, but again, chucked the kitchen sink at him late on. He's shown the ability to box a little bit in later years. We know he can fight, we know he can stand and trade. We've seen that against guys like Avni Yildirim in recent years, against Liam Williams, who many had picked to potentially give him some real problems, and he handled him with absolute ease. There is a chance that he could handle this with more ease than many people had thought on Saturday night.
Well, he's so extremely fit, tough, and strong that you kind of, he's neglected some of his boxing knowledge or tutorage anyway, because he just loves to get in there. He's inherited his dad's granite chin, and he works so hard. He really does. He leaves no stone unturned. Look, he said 60% here, but I've no doubt, he would have trained his absolute socks off for this fight. But you mentioned the George Groves fight there, and I think that fight, coupled with Roy Jones, is one of the reasons, again, he started to learn a lot more, taking the advice that he's been getting. That experience against George Groves, losing that evening, I think showed him that you've got to learn the fundamentals. You have to. And that's basically all that George done in that fight. Don't get me wrong, he was a naturally bigger man, but he worked well behind the jab. He took the distance away from Chris Eubank during that fight to try and land the right hand, etc.
Kind of exposed his limitations as a boxer.
Exactly. So I think, that experience, coupled with doing some work with Roy Jones, it brought him on as a fighter. He's got more strings to his bow now. But again, I mentioned the Grove fight once more. What we did see is a late onslaught from Chris Eubank, showing us again why he's been so successful. How much will to win that he has, even though there are the limitations, you could say, as far as boxing is concerned. But what is Chris Eubank Jr.'s ceiling? It's so interesting, from his point of view. If he was to get past Connor Benn on Saturday night, hoping that the fight goes ahead, what is the next fight some sort of eliminator or a world title fight in your eyes?
Well, it has to be, doesn't it? It has to be at that stage. Otherwise, what's he in it for? I guess the difficulty is, once you've gone up and earned the kind of money that he earned in the Super Series, you don't want to then go back and fight for average money. So every fight has to be a big sell. It has to be the right dance partner. The pot has to be big enough. Otherwise, it's very hard to get out of bed and put yourself through what you need to get through. And that's, of course, one of the reasons why presumably this fight has got over the line, because he understands the magnitude of the promotion. It's been almost as big as any kind of British fight promotion that you can remember. Really, outside of, say Joshua and Fury, there aren't many that you can put together in a ring and say it's a bigger fight in terms of the eyes on the product, the money that it's going to generate. And for him at this stage of his career, if it isn't titles, money is the motivating factor.
But yeah, I've said that, but when you look at his career, the only thing that's missing is a recognised world title. Yeah. He's earned millions. Driving around in a McLaren. Yeah. It's incredible. That's footballers' cars. He's made bundles. He would have had this mega fight behind him, this big domestic showdown that is, the family name, the legacy, etc. The only thing that will be missing is the world title, and I'm completely sure that after this fight, that would, he wins, because he's retired if he don't win. He'll push on for a world title. But it has been an interesting journey to watch the rise of Chris Eubank Jr.
And his relationship with his dad publicly playing out has been an interesting one to watch as well. It was that kind of almost ever-looming presence when he first turned over, and his dad, with the Great Britain flag, and his dad standing behind him in the shadows, and it was almost as much about his dad as it was about him in the early days. And of course it was sometimes standing in the corner between rounds, posturing in place of Ronnie Davis, and many people felt, well, shouldn't the trainer be in there giving instructions?
But you know, all of that now, it all made sense because
look
it
where we
could
are.
have quite easily have been, I know he's Chris Senior's son, but you look at Harlem Eubank, if he didn't get as involved as much, would the profile be as high as it is now? The fact that he was so heavily, you know, involved in the beginning part of his career made him that, you know, it was so intriguing, it really was.
And he always maintained that, you know, when people said it was his excuse to go back into the spotlight, it was so that he could get a handle on his son's career, keep him safe from the kind of snake pit that is boxing. He knows how easily fighters can be led astray, taken advantage of, and I suppose that, like any dad, as Nigel is with Conor, as I know you are with your kids, he's protective of his son.
You know, I don't know if we can look into this too much, but you can see they're all short, sharp shots inside. Probably understanding that Conor's going to try and get on the chest, so... And there's a jab I was talking about, but generally it seems to be the short, sharp uppercuts inside, followed by the left hook.
Yeah, we know he's good at kind of nudges the space with the left elbow, makes room for that uppercut, and of course against the shorter man, that's a shot we can certainly expect to come into play at some point. Certainly he'll be looking for that. And for Ben, of course, when he is applying the pressure, got to be moving his head every time he punches, doesn't he? Can't stay in front of Eubank.
Without a doubt, and I think Chris Eubank there working on the uppercut, and that's the shot that you tend to throw when you're fighting a shorter man, and we have seen Conor really change levels and dip down low, and if the fight does go ahead, I'm sure we'll see lots and lots of uppercuts from Chris Eubank Jr.
Seeing there, just those little steps in and out, potentially just trying to use that foot feint to draw something out of Connor Benn on Saturday night, and well, that looks like it's all done and dusted for Connor Benn in terms of his open workout. It's Padman Anthony there, Ronnie Davis in the background as well. Will that be the team in his corner on fight night Saturday? Will there be a surprise? We seriously don't know. I mean, I can't remember a show where we've had any less information for the audience than this one. I probably never will again.
And we know so much about him.
Well, thank you everybody for sticking with us this afternoon. It's been a surreal couple of hours when the news broke for us, but we've tried to unpick it as best we can in the heat of the moments, waiting for Eubank, hearing from Conor Benn, Callis Allen, Eddie Hearn, and of course Eubank Jr. himself. Some conflicting reports, some reports that align with each other. No doubt it's only going to fuel speculation on social media as to what has been said between the two parties, and of course the biggest question of all, whether or not they can find a resolution ahead of Saturday night. And if they can, it's going to be one of the biggest sporting events of the year. A rivalry over 3 decades in the making, 30 years after Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn fought to a draw in what was touted as a decider in their legacies, left the Eubank-Benn rivalry very much unfinished in the eyes of many. Can the two sons, Chris Jr. and Connor Benn, settle it in the ring on Saturday night? I think our information at this point could be out of date within the next 10 minutes, half an hour. Certainly by tomorrow we'll be in a completely different place. So very little point us speculating anymore on whether things will go ahead or not. You'll have to keep your eye on the official announcements from the board, from Wasserman Boxing, from Matchroom Boxing, of course, on social media. And those announcements will inform what is to take place in the next 48 hours as to whether this fight goes ahead. But for now, Eubank Jr. looking relaxed, calm, confident, faith that they can get this over the line. And he has faith that he will be victorious. Benn bottom left on that big fight poster, Felix Cash helping him prepare, and there is the other half of one of the biggest main events in British boxing history, Chris Eubank Jr. and Connor Benn, born rivals at the O2. From Chris Lloyd here with Darren Barker, thank you so much for your company and your patience, more importantly, this afternoon, and we will hopefully see you at the press conference tomorrow afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Chris Eubank Jr. takes on Conor Benn live on DAZN PPV. To watch this event, sign up for DAZN first to access live boxing. Choose a monthly plan, then add the pay-per-view event. If you're already a DAZN subscriber, sign in, select the event, and follow the steps to buy. Don't miss Chris Eubank Jr. takes on Connor Benn. October 8th, live on DAZN pay-per-view.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. It's now time for the featured bout of the evening. From the four corners of